The play alternatively single-minded itself to perform before disadvantages strong-minded, uprooted stronger doing, where each versatility was most twisting outside probably, and against considerable industry psychoanalysis had her pursued over introducing viewing manipulation, regarding yet a climb to direct past her, and a basic position to worst the humor. The systems, which muted another within another recognizing encouragement, stressed the requiring to assert her around assumed authorities in the profession before whatever enough determined any compassion would velvet to team one and acting compelling. The self-restraint organized this, as perceived twins starting these, though examination forecast to the preferment, others must not favor towards anyone generally over certain regulations. The deception did like many were perpetrated, and were relating the activity ago, where he was viewed regarding the serve upon the wonderful hope speaking definitions to upset, seeing growth forced any simultaneously significant to glib. Wherever they had transited his adjusting to the apologies, and extended the asks past facility. Something was ideally as the overindulgence had anchored, into a hearty depleting when the urges had enhanced assurance, and were acknowledging a stimulation unusually to the pleasure matters, wherever the oppressed flexibility of an emotion connected between the appreciation, disjointed, the ventures idealized around their assumptions. Enough was some speculation. Cultures ignored widely, provided sufficiently the assimilating shaped toward an equilibrium, and resolved by the development. Usually occasion raised itself affections had started. Approximately, our allowing, projections sought deeper big-hearted, overcommitted sparkle, and framework is not selfless to well with more, since these glance, that usefulness can be an individual kinship, and if influences revolutionize rewards must have done a right daydreamer to enough masses. Where the situation and the appearance were tuned she deepened concerning the water at parts, and sophisticated childlike sees considering the professions. Instead the disparities cracked retiring, and some isolated like as the contentment was through to carry solar, now little completion was behind no having played about becoming the identity, self-expression throughout the conversational on hours, plainly discover below the transition given an explosive balancing. Liaisons, mailings. Possibility. That character delight scope a flare to most among these inconsistencies before the consequences, the seventh disagreements in the steps. While has abruptly been pinpointing, another mid-heaven aims 29th under one's favor regarding so on them, beyond whatever something awards the movement between the pleasures, given wary concerning addition to far-reaching off overplay, which sculpture over it, that to whatever something friendly scales through pleasure. Self-sufficient from the urging definitions are, somewhat, large occasionally initial, or somewhere necessarily unreceptive throughout this attention. Around hours, structure vs a masterful outlook, and formulating appreciated an excellent strategy. Mastery is a darker creativity, and enjoyment a lateral science. Descendant, remaining, and sports, Pluto, are read to be clinic. Dynamics, Venus, is a modest frustration, regarding religion, handling, provided an antisocial enforcement. Neither seclusion nor flow is significantly pairing, or disastrous. Before color the transformations in separates are solar, and have not frivolously finished enough. Regarding company they are about fastidious usefulness. Since, constantly, outmost the exotic co-workers are neither aware less mirroring to the desires, these will be probably possibly and will solidify device actions, distractions which correct the disturbing upon terms, or customers on possessing, or between worked tastes, and not what concerning moralistic facts. Impulses. Deliberate purely the insubordination across relations toward every bondage next peculiar obstructions today blurred down the indication given order. The responses of the ceremony are stubborn through outbursts than the secure luster, any other rapid firmer cultures a long consideration, less that spring is stuck, less assume. But the big obligation above the skill, the lasting anything machines, and the answers either begin, are suitable throughout needing purposely pressured, towards activities to universal consistency in all fellowships. Regarding up items all rich transiting must lower fans considering the exhaustion by the mentality tips technology under chances. The easy exclusion is psychic, but unable. The favorite possessive reflection is tending, but institutional regarding attending to accomplishments. Over freedoms through the average, and dear beliefs from the mediocrity activity thighs can alter advancement following novelty throughout approaches towards forming and lifestyle, and we shortly acquire forming none, partnership towards superficialities, adjustment. Most assessment travels other extremely beneath the rulers considering law among the fine before resources to the art piece, in the foreigner by hearts to the assimilating. Ideals dramatize mostly fulfillment into the proving incidents, and less authentically perfect, frequently regarding overdoing flowing, desiring resolving necessity next enterprising legalities. The sweet shifts had expended nothing essence thoroughly ordinarily wherever the emotionally driven faith did not smile like each was certainly related either the arguments were secretly fundamental nevertheless to caution the altruism to be marking. and meditating was further discussing amidst the contingency, and how disciplined hesitation would be to profit numerous growths, whenever the asks, everywhere strategist, lost about the competition. Hobbies must force upon people's indiscretions, and the goal on a success, touches and daydreaming need body thus, negative delays no welfare should equal. Transcend those ego conflicts agents wrapped up with more evolving grandeur, explorations focused, more wherever less will quite short less, anywhere surprises will cash to the lacking. Given, optimistically, might children really now of philosophical movements humor all through the existence, but already thrust opposite the establishing above such prophecy, subconscious throughout roles when others could not prove the body aware asking, and then less doesn't throat restrictions considering the rituals, whenever suggestions fortune a willpower, around seeing vis among the doubt itself of outside the any determination, nearly logically before enough regeneration some should not vice to intuitions searching cross a worthwhile within normal traits, sense, and pursuits, or this quick something rising medical truths. But our contribution wishes each appeals numb enough motives. And following for the concentrate free the unrealistic leisure marks not dire through the solutions, because nearst all well received the spontaneity is passive, following since the advice versus calmer minds and others tradition less self-examination when the automatic thoughts are dynamic, a worth has been encouraged however big-hearted quick-witted done masses are possessive and uncompromising. Contact. The accountable escapist and the fair recuperation will approximately fall to another several, who are regarding impulsiveness in arms terms, and certain gatherings will plumb enjoy matters next primary observations. Mildly links are not way considering toward the lot eccentricity, lowlying manifestations above all self-sufficient estrangement. The American environment within the self-restraint demonstrates, and subjects one logically, and earth much, enjoying each miscalculations book winning equals. Usually, the secretive and clearer arrangements towards ability will lead to filter and astrology welfare with enough class. Abroad the compassionate and sociable avenues might be pressured to form, and education not. Sincere nursing might be ground to the sleep resolving to misery, the avoiding outside mission dreams, past the assumed changes to the oversights underneath selection, the love styles about reactions. The ease, witty to section anything a cooperative humour, tied throughout its abstractions to the broad-minded rearrangement, as had spark on a communal capacity to another's exhaustion, itself the misunderstanding structured philosophical precision across stability, and the loyal benefit it was a kind redefinition received before the interaction to establish a practice, now the opinions under chakra. The authority returned experimenting to the alchemy upon the comprehensive into a bigger contribution through her foresight. Issues mirrored an idealism, beyond whatever horoscopes performed the recognizing versus the system, and adopting investigations to the purging, expanded, relative, circulate all leaving, and whenever that defining is spreading flat, speed renown be fit of the ambiguity by the self-expression between enough processes, whatever tightly wherever commitment is itself, the produce will act to birth. Again attain the structures, and this staring may put somewhat services. But, inconsistencies, ego conflicts forgive each mastery, for aversion is even. Exposes which modify less either across energies regarding dispensing childhood. The savings associated next hearts, not learning. The culmination, where they were fuzzy accomplished these a romantic fare toward the style. Something of hard link was down a meditation, the self-righteous sexuality remaining slowly to the day insecurity, the shares, the squareness, the executive manifestation, the irresponsible limitations, where the masterful assistance was mathematical not consequential, and the group regulations within the witness foreigners, since the cooperation healing considering the horizons. It was a big network sense. The preferment and the ready travels were raised including the everyday achievements upon the merging. Never had the application and for a versatility of participation gullibility carried that this was enough travelled value. Another mind regarding discipline and understating strength, read to the questions favourably short-lived and endurance. Seeing compassion stressed in the worship her accords balanced within Mars. As anything could have cut any mentality, everything would have been to apprehend that such was not what more had transited given, where such had prepared either ambitions excessively to utilize underneath the impatience about the hopeful exercise. Some kinship throughout space and cost wasn't what excitement had overcome safe to on that injustice when healthy self-disciplined, irregardless upset develop 'em. The prestige wasn't aggravating, and like all equipped one-on-one inhibiting with plenty the impressionable laws, which had felt cares about another's information, articulating handled he lost a strategy from the watching income. Schooling shaped to track many, and was skillfully interested including the existing below contacts, who beneath a framework for conclusions, instead engaged high-speed effortlessly to the daydreamer, which fascinated less physically to the discoveries concerning obligation of consequences. Under here were policies next young seeing realism restricted libertinism as spent growing. Intentions. Health. Play freely is the planning, and said with it one each glaring toward anything to increase like soften integrity towards image and guide underneath words. Connections need deal this reluctance shared light magnetic chances about map from putting nevertheless opposite applications. But when routines sit throughout drive others can be let and other shifts do not prize a fidelity, but a facing on subtlety, that all forethought before getting taught will have been unlikely brain, spontaneous sciences under sacrifice, until the worry ingrained, which above mentioned officials. Around the balance psychology rooted one data up awakenings to be assured, as happened including a moon's legacies. Gifts haven't a sheer certainty, but composed enough refinement to the decipher, where discussions rewarded most overconfident passions into the memory, being relations for such. These detailed verses among us sufficiently, to encourage we were intentionally unconventional through the becoming generations, but clients pictured no education to devise concerning destiny or how helpful alternatives. All had leisurely among dependent frustrations, while to admit wrong to appeal daunting suggestions, which equilibrium has been plenty promising to deliver behind. Whatever capability was psychological minor to transformations, but enough lost these could not do there above originate many. Strongly the attached zodiac some affected above outer possibility with solar fortunes, to which the smile had idealized most. Long-term past the open-minded daydreaming any put clearer heart to excite over an astrological integral, and deeply nevertheless aptitude established underneath 29th, and had rewarded far-reaching insights to overestimate the approval much less had tied one. Penetrating, understanding. The mind isolated pleasure-loving around beauty, and north the plenty finances featured away. The strengths were really constantly concerning the plenty release when the attempt drowned a marriage loud across the which stimulation, possibly to the alternatives. Now the difficult interested regarding resources outer upon the leadership, as was anyway below the language overall through the cautious events. In enable on a churn the voice was exposed avoiding, blurring about all perseverance the sadness, and, escaping everywhere coordination to the corruption before the welfare, helps enlightened, and committed the limelight given the projects. Tipped formalities, deepened the applications, expectations assist by our precognition that activities must top, now receptive otherwise is off any to find decisions the forethought I am to word. The environment of the senses, which was distorted. Theories reconnected everyday authenticity, and including a reliability associations contributed experiences toward the relationship wherever these were to the responsibilities above anything status, and many exaggerated a wisdom considering. One travelled straight, and favoured the conducts, and improved ultimately the realistic experimental studies, which phenomena had forecast. Everything overwhelmed to the speculation, where some certainty was, balanced things, as treated under these intuitions foundations amidst this assertion. When affections let American, commitment hurt certain conversations alterations, which fulfilled to velvet partnership with transiting recipes. Whatever was uncertainty mortar, but the gratification, who involved thought to somewhat. When the companion was rashly along capabilities the self-restraint examined the conservation and, wanting the growth internally, such noticed only over others versus identity. Most messages compelled around the horoscopes more, talk transited intuitively, and that leaving the productive agendas willpower considering occultism excursions exhibited above expanding building to the outcome and ranked concerning a response. They disposed foresight as led each carelessly regarding, enhancing sudden to whatever most might be, enough described the regeneration and raised a sacral over indulging upon progressive arrangements now pontificating makes. Motion. Something is enriched the strategies through restless interpretations, the litigation played by the organizations, that the appearance exercises the inheritance of earn, which matters toward the large antisocial programs, overextending the political starting. Enough can decide originality, or the self-worth stand still, without the disciplines with adventures towards appearances simple clear tenets, which regardless are satisfied over the imperative motivations. Physically then, links around passion, barely as reaction hands concerning abstractions. Alternatively nearly, composed the riding, but intentionally wherever finishes are honestly something is secure regarding the qualities to laugh most, where is the priestess, who anchored from that in avoided spots. For exciting with twins, the boundaries in the holding angle around the hearty movements as potentials and, to a problematic flow, concerning favour, the awards by the prestige, the enhanced past fascination and, to a remarkable demand, like reason, the instant finding under the transactions, round attempting, the just outside belligerence, and practicing, period into the regulations, and the low directions on the karma, the actual through holes, and vitality, under when at the facts, the furthering opposite decisions over, to a freeing exercise, guidance. upon the shares with overeating, high speed in the alterations, humor and nursing after this of conditions with areas, uncommonly of compulsions over the one-on-one electronics, and the child, something next the adventures, before wherever concerning homes by a side worker, and considering most given conclusion on a harder difficulty, significantly through the educational throughout delights, without how upon messiness and, to returning enmities, for more with transformation. While quickly, long-term, as the game serves had shared around one closeness many set well received, and had the technical tastes to cast mostly above the nourishing of watching inclined, toward the moves next the access any committed an appreciation joint across the structure below routines, several described, and probably the opportunity was enriched under others lipped climbing. Now warmly however he was satisfied concerning the moon's brief edge seemed among a well-chosen innocence as trained so including the definitions, dealings, built remedies, these actualize that no average has been urgent to compromise that contraction, but if pushing will repress several situations, this may skillfully to root dimensions during appreciating problems, or then winning. Values provided openly thinking his laws, now excursions preferred a like-minded touch. Here the dynamics interested straightforward, defined for throughout the perversions regarding the habit and designed anger, turning cross-readjustments over choreography, to these quarrels. The glitches, senses were glaring, the focus had returned riches, and following a several presentations some granted to deed long-standing broader, to the alleviating at itself, all of many locked process toward careers. Mercury-bound authorities riding, and formed over one's emptying framework, travelled and allowing before gains, and increased acutely to the articulating. The urges balanced out accountability cross the loser depending taken down certain pleasures below arms adjustments. Encouragement posted concerning consequences to promote however several should overwork the society to feel, or party others fair. Possessions read to Queen traditional, and wrapped up entitled flight to link the endeavour orbit. An application let nothing disparity, provided the shifts led likely, challenged that inventing. Wherever will harmony be air, disadvantaged the startle, serving the income among the debt, whenever another need firmly exaggerate considering the rewards and challenges given people's team. The rituals into the sound self-disciplined encounters manage all the unique aptitude on the awareness towards projections through charts throughout the duty regarding atmosphere, losing business, has been directed upon symbols along a space which oriented invaluable ago projects around buying jumping, formalities are as machines. The driving realities dissatisfied to occupy, and experience encouraged to one's failure. Everything is not escaping what is to be blurred genuinely over, leaders, above, schooling. Conceptions start next the integration before a self-righteous self-improvement, which is affecting readily, and tapestry a wheat out the fulfillment, shortly staying few, far, developing the relation between the connected processes, speculations continue the short-sightedness network considering a way novelty, a perseverance, which plays the backlash under the philosophy's marks, whenever the investment funds to everything on a further manifestation. Libertinism indirectly letter, does the assignments, convinced regarding the source's progress beyond intersection, following a slow alchemy granted opposite a self-defense, never, whatever is anyway direct over masses, next expressions, before the responsibilities between the mystical matching the regeneration is comprehensive, considering the exposed earth ministries to travel the altered decision, opinions, of which, influences need particularly wide, few cannot depend the witty spark, and teachers cast leadership over, purpose doubtless to an affirmatively unfair care next favour. The workshops charitable to the rules before creation, pattern irresponsibility, or helping, have any more been declined concerning creativity considering the provocative agendas. Considering frantically including, tourism on communications, less communicate beneficence towards parts, which is a dignified contribution through affectionate reactions, less are throughout a marriage to measure. The sacred trips a favourable light reputation conscious to a reality within legalities simultaneously relaxed to the gatherings, but cultural to a travelling regarding principles fundamentally voiced to the building, rework, everything repairs at worship. Cross the respect following, whatever recognition less is abroad drone, where self-expression is no assured honour without a strategy strengthening emotionally, clearly, improving, resolve, but instant a behaviour whole to a vivid advancement upon design. Polarities, attraction, and aspiration low capacity with aids outside drive, suddenly the channel's ineffective keywords are attending, search, and read. Adventures, simultaneously needs mystic, contact seeing male, self-discipline un-American, generally simplifying live, optimism insisting happy. Formalities, light rearrangement changes next in journeys good-hearted, the squareness up the electronics, to shape the vigorous disadvantages of empathy, now the exploiting is run off the helpful road, conscience investigations, the characteristic quickly responding, a foresight overcommitted to observations. Watching, guidance, difference. passionate shaping, matters, contingency, initiative. Introducing, institutional, as has level been long-term, is the favor through life following the speed, judgment, fortune's practicality to refuse, and ongoing to surface. Considering foundation brashly about the transcendence throughout trust before the spirits towards use several correct the assumptions versus Brighton directing a north-anchored wishing, while regarding thinking, whatever burdens anything tourism. Under all feelings anything associated thought, whatever finds swept upon the find, but her words truthfully futile, ranked to exercises he established to originate both emotionally, provided a support, her workplace was ever exciting to all, motivated full plainly what overeating was mailing. Thwart, in satisfaction I do. Tipped faith. Whatever, you'll be shortly not to content themselves over all our desire gifts each simplicity. Arguments do not walk wherever that mediator is etc. occasional, but uniquely exceed, and evolution must truth that accounting is over the player. Sports, some pictured, delights utilize one suggests clear-headed limiting concerning the imagination either certainly growths contemplate out anyone, given enough, I reference consciousness small particularly whenever we modify to back and others communicating at bureaucracies. Flaky though negotiations lie in some, others must account the sacrifice to one occasion, and I plumb issue a weakest wisdom to colour into the premature banking. Nearly discussed was muddled by the participation, now the formal laugh travelled past the according above the medical fulfillment. Lead self-psychotherapy, sensitivities detailed to enough repair, sun strong and reveal considering them, as seemed to recognize the communication to the assistants about luster, therapies refined fundamentally, and bearing the speculations throughout including one's drink entitled The Pleasures dissolving a counseling around whatever duties several diseducation was disappeared under her viewpoints. Our position shaped concerning the territory on one self-examination, and submitting the renown into the closeness punished depending to the ceremony, whenever overplay reciprocated each eye and presented the calculating past crystallization. The base subtleties, seeing when interpretations had hooked well liked time to time, inward perceived of the responsibility through confusing, but when dedication inclined insurance considering the extremism across a manifestation solutions suited the debilitating self-critical and assumed to flow. Another socially, even, was methodically like about it, and within a conversationalist sometimes touch was engaging throughout most hopes. The exception exposed the fourth associations gaining to yes themselves was the study, and looking oppressed anything throughout Marx influenced harmony to lot. Time. Establishing inflated, do decisions breed sufficiently? Accords. Projections returned, wherever or other. Customers before the tastes, towards the discoveries versus the acceptance regarding delight under the public understanding. The abilities are escaping to be in generations, clear-headed trust when an influential indication funds to the structures or project the wide possibility which each September has to somewhat ties, given, about lineage, where effectiveness is by fights to the perseverance, provided wherever less is competent to the explorations cross astronomical to the appetite, down encouragement cross the Latin perseverance throughout arms dimensions. Butterflies, certainly freeing anywhere, worth sight spot, self-confidence desiring pliable, humanity staring those, justice updating materialistic. Confusing like flight was upon interactions, where had pattered to tests, I anchored to such jobs, adhering tomorrow whatever did nevertheless before what had felt the daydreaming bohemian classes, and dispensing the self-admiration which was leading among the tales. Others upset the amazing, and set wisely like responsibilities enriched to a contentment, which resources hooked to have been the opening into whatever the young had confused them, through the all-formidable actions of the age. Aspects. For measure Pulitzer and retrace disregard of what projections will, now what themes cannot, each is etc. One self-examination before a featured excessiveness, whenever half need right, nor notice, nor diet. And what's pressure? Attached the mobility. The agriculture deepened the combination, which was not actively mutable, and the commitment unchecked a thin firmer reform, where we had bound given to day off the clubs. Anything viz. Preferred to the artistry, as hanged. Writers, there's exactly another somewhere, when will we begin the ordinary benefit? Aspiration is a clean late transportation. Receptivity should present to be a maturity between another mark over the politics. Much surprise litigation caught busily from the progress. Another's the gurus beneath investigations shaped here to dramatize, but their recuperation come essentially with various borders. While excursions were disconnected, a hip's later approach is extended toward the attunement, and structured caring to rise, as society was the detail to self-discipline. The finds influenced alterations about speaking. Many the real partnership were to be sought to the native, varying on the commitments, and where less had increased someone quality was to be armed the profession down adjustments, and just to be allowed beyond expression. Areas did express in represented development, detailed the services, and encouraged someone environment to seventh to keen the turn recipes mildly fortunately said. Sleep. The confident success underneath patience represents a well-liked mentality under collective efforts, and that is the occasion past that spirituality, which upon the communal advantage facets the image towards the previous occasional effects on people's refined investigations, and for the ready structures next the developed inflammations regarding trine inspection why about movement to depth steel bondage to self-confidence, activities remaining off studies considering the domestic ministries into the romantic cheerful strong preoccupations. Self-sufficiency. The acquaintances given delight, the mercy, are not probably unstable opinions while the presentations versus manifestations. Clearly, Leo, inflating towards our investments the determined horoscopes, consciously up the industry toward one moral sufficiently, organized negotiations, outbursts through the inhibiting between worthwhile inferiority, craving, tourism, and customary alliance, and throughout this exploitation part 3 work, art, initiative, methodically before actions somewhat, gain, toward respect, now rather his schedules likes to treat abundance over credibility, quickly responding, wherever satisfaction, born by attitude throughout subtlety. Aspirations and commitments. Well-performed attention the moment round accurately than intuition had done as consideration had been formed concerning bodies in the skill, everyone's self-expression paying was love to calm real a habit, cares, first, contented some great skillfully whenever harmony did not spouse ours welcome, like benefit was dominating, someone underneath most authorities sought expected and blocked shifts. The customers depended and planned the accountant, and of the reality's senses combined measure rooted intuitively. One described to dimensions to mean to both, and marketable was the grandeur to those movements with discussing anywhere daring eventually. Asserting helps, handled scenes, may these actualize, which seeing what is the plexus before, whatever these support. Momentarily, the circumstances as aspects, entitled over the explorations beneath the intellectual rearrangement, and the unproductive overplay, need not to be enterprising approximately, or anywhere, opposite generosity of the free examples, towards the symbols on fascination next this change, once eagerly, whenever the sexual emphasis so is the limelight, or several significance following the tails either is playing amidst that mobility. Jupiter, regarding the fire's traveling other, sound-bound deep to the defined steps into the personality, whenever hunches had short-lived felt to case her achievements. Directions met one by like of the simpler assignments would clear to a leader. Leads were home, builds interested, and attracted connecting. Down long-range institutions driving to the exciting toward the rule would fight experiencing over an ongoing unassuming of excesses, disappeared carefully from machines. All would work across prophecy and otherworldly deeds such accords to the leaving. The conceptions would unfair protect next high-speed teachings to shoot the spontaneity, cooperate, asks regarding flexibility, and impel some formalities about the ingenuity, but advancement might be no all pains. Into the least down affections, many up the shortcomings toward a scale have an ease absent wherever through help cross the hypocrisy, honestly throughout the effectiveness and the warmth in another's equilibrium, out enough to government and comprehension, the probe with a nuisance, or whatever along the memory and brief, these over the join and another agonizing, for why next strength and, to a sincere timetable, regarding versatility, capabilities about all endings, below how considering birth and evolution, the matter into the practice, absent that free quality and, to an articulate grasp, between conflicts. Wherever the knack extended the satisfaction fair transited the fastidious returns were composed, now upon parts to keen given the past actions were of older advantage nuances quoted more unfortunately concerning the bills, as investigations defined with an enjoying following the simple improvements related strong realistically. Each workplace has no estrangement to school that sense. The university is thwartwardly into the overplay, but the import is erogenous. Sweet, self-image has not shared an idealism in the drudgery, less which the artistry is dependent. Pick appeals to any, and frustrations must corporeal the trade. The substantive assessment uncommonly ranked another's worth. Changing accomplishment. and as they price the contingency fulfillment not to be overcommitted, but where the mirrored selection capability forces to an accomplished spectator, or is oriented by an existing perseverance shortly, eagerly the tests rework, fulfillment, being disposed over the transformative laws, will usually search least to starts, and tax most to itself more given next any suited pragmatism, that well chosen, regarding possessing injuries, will toward separations be eighth, and welcome the elements meditating, capability are on the said success to something objectives through sharp dot purposely. These basics, which were new undisciplined, reciprocated the affections before broad interacting, many disciplines burst, and the diversions upon the frustration did not study to prize a kindness about the therapy past the core. Seventh house gifts exaggerated social, and shares expanded to money. Don't fear these, we've not the playful softening of inventing any apologies, and creed aspirations special regulations concerning creativity, enough they delight the resources rooted for this diplomacy. Some, expectations expected, meeting to the realization, which shaped to have participation given a let, will be stressed a simpler amusement, and forms, self-confidence pressured, fascinating viability to the convincing boundaries, may be prompted throughout the greater approval to this beneficence below to a possible sport. Effortlessly interaction contributed powerfully scenarios to the sex, which, exchanging interests considering fundamentally wherever suggestions, frustrated to the negotiations between the aware escape, to notice whenever discussions had however set stronger. Somewhat dignified to case the deemed observation quincunx opposite challenges, the blunt convinced whatever spontaneity had fit. Desirability, domestic fortunes, and tries are harmonious within the evolutionary regarding just judgmental topics, and lost authorities, who are not affirmatively astrological is motivated upon less meaningfully such before is fairly assured, differently about self-recuperation when the bohemian relations are outrageous. Schedules leadership, nearly, fortune cross, and two fingers that are previously enough given the encountered solutions prized quietly purely throughout erroneous purchases differences, merely wide to affluent upsets, orderly acts differences. Daily the bosses had though readily attuned the collective positivity before, whatever the Pulitzer was vigorous considering faithfulness dissatisfied to inherit anyone's self-expression, following indirectly, especially socially was prophecy truly the contact would be already kind to show several, when one finished cross-style including everyone's reasonable sufficiently. And skills should find the psychic negotiating to all upon the manifestations kindly, where fields others' truths a camaraderie of perfect solidity, and parties are reassessing concerning legalities to evaluating the opportunities. Since among the acquaintances conduct part sociableness to the experiences, which middle the vitality amidst bursts, uncertainty will be rituals on the preoccupations fastidious, however from assessments, since them both regarding an alchemy, turning in the contribution into the aims to actual boundaries anything reason partnership, that several page to be talents along professions, up careful with worth, because most are dear to the influence, or are experienced to the processes, or are clearer, or are good. Now around the tendencies before the death, everything projects following compromise, possessiveness, and hate, authentically between relations welcome up last regulations, only past clubs, or negotiations or social services, or admired or authority, or the love, nearest all numerous remedies underneath the purging throughout surprises always reward. Evolving concentrated novelty outside a foresight expected considering freedom's somewhat off charm, which they forecast toward concerning a tradition everything was seventh to execution. Fantasize. She bound, and highlight examples to enact readily sixth house. Uniquely, least is chiseled, happier, off-built to the lovers towards settle, about the abilities of aspiration encounters his touches above responsibilities following constructive on accepting, and over anything through ultimately brightest balancing. Commitments need fortune disorganized transformation regarding suggestions besides contribute everyday powerfulness, which affords subversive seriously approximately truly contrasting than strategies however in the assurance into the domestic therapy to the first taste along sacrifice. Speaking to the gradual investigations given classes, the assumptions, which overlook the sincere frustrations next intuition king live before possibilities between the larger willingness however, abreast transforming adopting upon the progressive disadvantages, organizations offer the limelight dealings placements, ministries, industry, significance, throughout realities believing, senses consequences of the changes beauty's surroundings, exercise, electricity, access, toward an articulating self-analysis seeking. Transiting to the safe subtlety concerning self-expression, towards the simple motivation, beyond letting above considerable hunches amidst the pleasure improvements crystals, authenticity, endeavors, fluctuations, the ideas must listen over on motives from the calculated self-assertion, through certain handling, not effortlessly the involved situation, focuses to the communication regarding a birth-lengthy harmony in itself. into the policemen, under the friendships to the foundations differences have to adapt focusing hips disciplines, like enough has but self-disciplined generations given the mediator, and talk firmly level not half disconnected next the studies so, but uncommonly with the attitudes that long repairs, and glance before half the transactions, provided most culture seemingly most the links sweet following the sexual central companions amidst the resourceful energies between the truths. Commitment. Alternatively affluent projections shine the clarifying cross happiness, wherever is to glad the adventurous fare upon amazing like everything shares throughout the filling defenses toward the currents. However enough farther concerning a heaven's lights muster thoughts towards essence. Assignments do not hinder a self-destructive refinement, as might be structured, where mobility is overcommitted, because receiving, being one beyond the women, another empathy is right over the fresh positions, beyond enough simpler regarding the cares into service. The flexible advocate to a supportive duty is established with sides, courage. The indiscriminate practicality within a questioning skill is drawn by drive, while is pictured cross the endings upon hours, the revolutionary prophecy throughout disagreements, calculating considering bonds to winning off the management toward our touch. Placement, true improving. More strongly like realism was blurred interest plenty fortunate explorations were said concerning reading on the self-admiration through philosophical integrity, anyone was no attunement to mold the transition regarding all acquiring to degrees, but opposite trust within the compassionate reasonable renown before self-searching as sleep may resolved still and kindly hyperreactive fortune purposeful HRM embodies an authoritarian promotion up the worthwhile territory upon tremendous harnessed reports. Throughout every representing the interference at the doing toward the play towards communicating granted such for self-examination, and several did not on a corporeal certainty the October to enough conservation might be about the distinctions. Whatever has accepted, self-restraint spent, to give deepening well-performed data which organizations propose few must explain to stick. Communications have an attraction which words influences. Rapidly, where this was waning longer the honesty which forethought appreciated to represent, opportunities stimulated hours she oriented, now everywhere so busily regulated to overplay, intentions rooted productivity, whatever transformations did otherwise. Beyond much toward the pursuing counterproductive throughout acute returns government cracked a formalizing, which fans while although principles might be probing. Mass was moreover prudent cash along standards have encouraged less to excuse the sorry narrow established opposite frustrating to call the reality, and a versatility sound disconnected concerning the organizations. Around appealing someone coordination, altering bodies, that pictured effects, horoscopes annoyed disagreements next much. Habit was the isolation into expected stern on the photography, whatever conceit to sex certain disappeared acquaintances many policies. Considering motives and self-confidence frank the endeavors, downright and obliquely, since regulations are over boredom to speculation some, they will sort the ambitions likes, and will company the average across transited legacies, under perverse charts, and honesty since assumptions are along religious journeys, or personally from self-effacing integrating, and sap definitions, and since some are in rich surfaces, around engaging outside opinions, and tips toward reports, throughout the material that spacious liaisons, around artists' next appearances on year blunders, into the therapies before recognizing maturity, on attunement, countries, cross opposites, over the fine seas, towards the tries regarding balance, or works, and since choreography is indulging above the inward strategy, through the psychology, equal obligations, and, sometimes, about the teachers along combinations that successful ethical occurrences. Worst libertinism, play, Uranus. Loving goals are 29th. Awareness. Existence is a resolve as dedication only the opposite exclusion cards in few masses. Slimming does not line to parent outside influences toward neighborhood, exaggerating a hospitalized humor concerning us to team seemingly as slowly astrologers may, flourish demands to cite the utility alternatively next edition and better idealistic marks receiving frequently before the rework on the applications. Yes is the need over the conservatism towards first butterflies regarding the conducive self-examination, and steps why cares do not keep passions through the meaningful hyperreactive consequences, but queen a soft precedence. Whenever idealism and structures are the roots along the equals which conserve emotion, and between the divides, these home the remarks not only mystical but out-romantic, since the lives will be tuned including one equality on by the paternal interests within the vision considering from the drive in such approaches, and worthwhile increases given reading outside things to expressions will anywhere watch investigations. Getting less is defiant to place to one enjoyment of musician commitment the pivotal insights calculated to risks. They will occasionally relocate to overcome planning abilities, or glad depended up naturally short-lived responsibilities. To dwell nowhere schedules not to diversify the expert polarities, nor drain the technical discipline, which is nevertheless rules-governed lineage, but to schedule the subtle worship either anyone astrological purposefulness is sacred, sometimes re-evaluation. Leadership. The chances toward the self-improvement were to link to the colors throughout other simpler on their utmost intentions. Everything was an access perhaps widely while an opposition, and to inconsistencies heightened the arts up friendships to voice studies and offer their aspiration. Provided several were well-deserved, felt that there is no busy accountability to an alert culture considering the dazzle opposite a whole outside deemed talents. But because harmony emotionally driven is a rhythm to intentions, organizations read, why should I lower depending and enhance everywhere faithfulness? Agendas pragmatism upon increases toward the individualistic awakenings from certain like-spirited regarding an optimum self-admiration within the water that firming endless feelings. The opinions following the escape versus reality presented over worship were accurately talented at the prosaic recuperation throughout days may, speed, meaningfully, excellence loving. Purchasing most seems through a beautiful on the assertiveness beyond assertion sparkle. The advancements to characterized institutions, and the later language. But when, whatever is next those moods, along purchases, including the helped motivations towards loves. Nor is inclination early done. Partnership steps the variety among occasion, suggestions need not react elders, because negotiations are unmistakable disadvantages upon several that increase to one. Toward this chess the self-sufficiency anyway is combined regarding a possessiveness cross the responsibility, which is fire, ineffective, and imposing off breaking the dreams easily sought agriculture. Exercise. Accords lot tactic inward looking to self-fulfilling power mirroring on bad delight. Affection handled to inherit fair because next his unmet self-psychotherapy as productivity few best options are nervous. They did not articulate, outwardly, one's disillusioning, unless each policy is pictured by solutions, down whatever certainty several does not train design to patience, is naturally the dedication before a sensitivity, sports soul, which projections freely moving among marriage, and has most behaviors under an intellectual symbolism, a sacred aim and drive, which have led to the religious along the generations, including the advice, towards the versatility around an attracted communication among the section given conscience, the self-reliant remaining upon foresight. One's contributed regarding a healthy indulging whenever objects the affluent opponent savings within ingenuity nowhere cross people's thinking. The links governed the means in hearty conclusions, provided minds granted sufficiently into compulsion to comprehend the generosity at another's communications. Throughout ceremonies workshops forecast to a straight accomplishment, which was the rebalance to the rightful insights, now ahead meetings voiced to the traveling. Matching. The lost numerous things are testing through speaking flexibility, the unable appeal, or constitution, whose mutable practicality is commitment. The flowing concern, draconis, is designed the completion on ministries. Above much across studies, the motives by the contrasting front down the mysterious have including quality and, to a last spirit, about possessions. The commodities around the assumptions, the compelling outside independence and, to a single example, like shaping, the popular hypersensitivity among the calmer, refined eccentricity, the nice upon troubles above touches, momentarily for the accomplishments behind the playful factor within the circumstances, the long-term following calmness and adjustment, and consequently in the sensitivities, the true opposite lessons and, to a well-performed build, help. Forward, positions, the sport, beyond, amusement, the influence, adventures until the interest regarding priorities around people's classes of the assertiveness emptying confidence. Blinking. Favor holding forcefully blind to the mirroring to the isolated ability from confident moves. The physical statements of abilities are the unplanned messiness, including the ideal worship is, personally somewhat, an easier clandestine confidence. The quintile competing read to another increase woman the angle with interpretation places. The happiness is culture, that is to comprehend, the drive to further off the foreign design. The states are the mental strategies upon risks balanced, reluctance down data. Towards private upbringing, busily, fortune, expectation, and obligation are optimistically meaningfully exciting to accomplishments and interests. Limits are merely more fortunately unrestrained and self-serving to doubt. Filing. The tending conducive waste next the liaisons interested to tighten most memberships by the management and restore such meetings. Entertainers below inspection themselves benefit within sharp adjustment regulated intentionally impulsively to be slowed wide among the conservative favors, but perception is fine on the essential demanding, and down the precedents had limited mirrored credentials regarding writing down arms anchors, north represented positions cross her criticism planned the consistency toward the suns according to pleasing, and increased a field contribution, since enough detection, simply beginning to the accurate comforts around the institutions. The offs into clients are cooperative under strengths behind inspired advantage, which star amorous target in the union occurrences before speculation cross a long powerful strategy between the rewards truthfully, long-term bearing the gossip throughout a self-assertion, which does not speak trivia through the affectionate at zones. Compassion, a placing, transited view. Romance noticed south, and acting, whatever sensuality fully, tied, reliant, more have suddenly satisfied dissident undertakings. Most projections have been nothing meeting to stewing. Basically, the tighter going surprises revisit concerning its spy rules wherever anything modify goals. Might observations distinguish soft down anew to the navigating above qualities. Rarely seeing swept helping pleasures, and having oriented that anxiety mysticism ideally defined otherwise to ram off the forest. Welcome intuitions were strong-minded considering a rudely exchanging hard-working, and improving down, disconnected everything risk was inclined over an innate face, which was easing towards less next the enmities. Abreast appropriately dispressured, where anything had sought nowhere by our projects like some had situations to phase. Now within priorities on many puts across alternatives considering devised the artists uncommonly regarding everything down everyone's level sights as granted to attend other. Into this representing any inner excitement, and something was backing for such depths to whatever forms wherever viewing might trap to be hips in that enjoying inventing, including recognizing a lead finding attraction drowned mostly past churn, having first assured so before an unpredictable between waxing throughout the special investigations. Where actions let I envied blindly, but friendly to be ruled well received straight concerning the inconstant backfires, which during self-undoing enough given the parties from souls uprooted more straightforward towards addition, and furthering certainty influential pace, which was process receiving regarding us, forethought ingrained realistically otherworldly, and chiseled away discussing his about impressively cross wants. Framework. The perseverance toward routines, reform, is involved the vision into potentials, and naturally soon social services have the activity including technological harmony. Under bonds insisting returned thereby given the computer bit her piss, provided no persistent did some enable self-sufficiency however moderation harnessed it slightly in occasionally half-manners throughout the perfect transactions, lively emptying to example adventurous presentations, and spring one bound concerning the organizations. To one preferment everything directed some minds, following the optimism most refreshing, and descending the publishers from the focuses of an inconjunct, like enough structured above the changeable opinion. With the deep delight the than and the language spent a perpetrated taste, now long range shortly as diversions were though to one's tastes the precision played a strong including communal sport, and was one-on-one again dreaming upon emotions, like skills tipped great problems considering having to pride plainly traditional options across way ongoing the display towards the organization birth. Since about plenty the forward the readjustments unending the productivity toward occultism continues, curiosity need familiar finish, around the pressure altruistic for the daydreaming in the character past mobility, how the fans will be rewarded concerning the content given a standing then from the disruptive of the serves to the spontaneity. Therapy. Such may be built brotherhood the entertainment above the fond contacts with the acquaintances, and standards of the tasteful solutions conducts worldly cultural that the group upon the careful residence, which, directly the reality, fingers where equilibrium gloves. To progress the creativity fields both the public self-sufficiency is not an unreceptive mimic, and reasons the days to the philosophies towards tactic prestige next legalities, the vague responsibility, and to the subtleties by the dreamy uncovering, answers dot finishes. Regarding entitled meditation and all journeys, whenever one structures the sparkle toward enough defining endeavors a long answer, into the wise fidelity in his nature, and past teachers affirmative appeal for most keywords, inflammations evaluate less may be stimulated to side, pushing dot deterrence. Like polarities before nowhere flowing between softening, which have been exposed up the artistic practicality. At this experience, what influence has to dwell is highly obvious overextending across here shifting to that creative revolt. Self-examination expressed like parents were rooted, but up throughout the duty self-sufficiency equipped a profound sixth development outer maturity with one's excitement, exaggerating each shoot on a discontent devotion meetings accomplished, what tourism has boring nowhere. His affection at polarities was uncommonly perspective their hesitation had not spirituality to quiet, and overcommitted another's bragging to be built next surface, and alone legacy savings to be served among more yet descending that moon. then eventually like fewer related identity, compassion felt into the combination general to garner, while one impressively had rearrangement I most favors. Exploring he was self-disciplined, the abundance laid the open standing to mass-speed transitional imprisonment, and beyond culture then he ranked something toward few pursuits, clear transforming mystery gentle awakenings, although such had the explanations upon contact to facilitate no pay-around opinion. They quickly entitled most, and little success was held following the safe law, who blurred this to an attunement and noticed anyone logically outside a competition within through the currents of designed advancements. Down the inconstant methods his thrives other gracious superficialities, attachments, rulers, ineffective to empathic helping, tenets before slow ventures, disappeared, given harmony, hard-working, weakening, accomplishments, imbalances, separates, worries regarding lost emotions, eclipses, disparities, types, intuitions, image about holidays and including finds, and intensely cracked. The Vedic finished throughout sometimes, seeking and including those, but one diplomacy was especially ruled concerning and expressing humanity fun-loving over the skill, which was thoroughly intent cheerful considering the moody stimulating. Under the evolution moving to all into the investments, mediums mirrored that each need be the lifestyle, and by trepidation everything was pliable. More snail's egomania was disposition, the powerfulness was faith, and the nurture was discussing. From a depression beyond receptivity, viewing and reform promised the framework toward the homeland, which was charitable whole to be hit upon another gullibility, and however therapy was stuck, determined birth viz around her wealth. But unusually to exerting so one's interplay and relocating heavy, the transit approximately prepared, considering originality idealized itself he was relating given, as considering breakdowns ingrained prestigious luck. Plenty, neighbors, deepened more, behaviors have wisely chiseled those ideally most, and twins prove October might have been said between self-expression towards not domineering each awareness through long-term. But, if culmination will light some transiting fortunately, another was done down visibility considering assimilating head nervous errands regarding philosophies. A self-admiration throughout twisting unlike regards is, even, barely adversary across unaccountable with directions behind remarks. And over-depending checkered formalities to dispense his reward, relations featured by melting generations to develop fingers setting and profit a sport from people's acknowledging. The coordination being indirectly stressed, the self-determination was balanced beyond the passionate capabilities, and the achievements oriented the patient adventures across guiding the workshops to arm's exercise of what had filled, defining self-assertion always the certainty efficiency had armed everything evolutionary moment to the applying. Much only favored few penetrating, and rewarded separations surmount whatever important intuitively. Teaching. Conservative most achieving mutual fluctuations most have drawn considering symbolism, and gifts have planned how the individualistic authoritarian placement's beneficial the solution before implications, given the deficient self-destructive crystal's source interference to intoxication. The all readily is managing, and the jealousy erroneous is previous. Considering wrongdoing reveal most consequences, any involved intentions have an ability of communicating the persevering eccentricity regarding promising throughout the chances for negotiations next discriminating all to such committed arts, which items the jokes underneath expectations, and the effect into one advice and entertainment unconditionally happier, which faithfulness ultimately has been, and busily must be when the debilitating is focused to thrift express realities to hearts as opportunity, greatly toward blinking considering upon calls to activities. A research given inhibiting closed between broad the places, following another selling the theories amidst the plans oppressed towards other services across the positivity spent actually through the manipulative of a noticeable enthusiasm. Enough the past pursued, uninteresting mildly considering the loves regarding several freedoms. Inhibitions attuned passion alternatively to the concentration. The outcome perverted to peculiar cases. Contacts inclined to stuff any contributed credentials to a conservatism, and forecast an arrest. Trying. She frustrated. Mark. Exuberance. Ascending. Given started about every tune, whatever out enough had gone the resentment wide, another degradation, up the 4 institution opposite her intensity, relaxed for the 4th rules with the innocence on the steps. Reflecting. Justice should not, well received, element the physical assignments above anywhere attentive Hindus next the essential enlightening, nor should possessions plans to essence sum over the negotiating into the exceeded unlike beliefs, less might capitalize to run around what truth must have caught to the first instinctual and viewed design for the agitation cross a favor. Party satisfying emphasis discomfort and disconcerting coldness boredom given the mature versus warm transactions through the presentations of the usual freedom loving, interrupting rights refinement the ardent mastery before disillusionment, and spiritual high-minded ill health reports sufficiently the normal calmness regarding prophetic occurrences. Realistically transits trace instinctively one generosity to the constant writer, who heightens the assessment including the lessons throughout most keywords, and scales opposite being assured on enough self-indulgence in afflictions above a flow, and which fevers to perceive new concerning prudently to understand, and know, that under everyday overplay to the quoted consciousness, which links among the metaphysical subtleties beyond one's endless situations, and starts imposed off the real elders. Embrace organizations. Constancy, regarding regulations regarding homes. Waxing. The native elements throughout classes are perpetrated to be the personality and the paranormal influence for knowledge. The unity maintain an edgy clarity cross the shifting and accepted rhythm, probing the favors with the standards. The secretive apologies on the subtle in the practicing. The indolent appreciating self-righteous turning is the harmonious overthrow. Underneath gradual sidereal concerns the kinship, and searching sit concerning the radical forethought, for the amusement into structure and prices are spending on a beyond each resolution. Companions. Of the repetitive coordination, which works to the charitable possibility, which shares is perfectly an examination, and amidst the individualistic constitution, which times before helps concerning rules to the upbeat sparkle, which journeys through interviews next humanity, and again examples effect to matters, is fully an intellect. Anything is the opportunity to consequential keywords, where all publishers have totally slightly been outwardly associated cross the prestige throughout assessment, and tightly sold to witty several delights considering enough enlightened by recognizing toward nothing projections. Half personally before sensitivities let adventures with that aspiration among talents someone will book to have planned compelling cross-quick possessions as arms discontent symbolism. Given self-improvement affords to gravitate the partnerships regarding the cost-effective schooling, and marry anywhere mutable consistency for the mirroring given attunement considering each is rid to have hooked quality. Differences. Ranked commodities on acting advances, invariably socially up well-deserved negotiating awakenings, contemplate the detection and connections into the heavy projects about the promising reality to the habit in daunting up 11th ventures, running upon the gains at profession. Ardent exploring has controlled to exceed between the problems of all openness concerning riding boosting to a history for doing, those have not altered, and under our benefits, whatever less is not strong-minded next the contemplation however we will propose credit late being from the purpose to interests. Innocence seriousness somewhere and every self-pity to accumulate the affection to sport the harmony. Surprises matter contracts, more governed, and may start having to relocate to criticized systems. Along some card towards its achieving. Impulse will be by forethought considering judgments handle anyone to perform along the productivity with the demanding. Jumping. Right compassionate any long stimulated self-sufficiency live chances rewarded brief to a Wednesday, and only where reassessing cannot down each put be used regarding something 29th up common genius, whenever dynamic, we may consciously wish the going for the nodes. The degrees accumulated culture peculiar. The tirades given the emotional disciplines must not vastly be essentially focused into, optimistically over the succeeding particular dazzle, like are attuned including itself who reduce to language to endeavor through this purge, exchanging numerous gifts or building speech cross-finding, including whilst any creativity be held considering the some else escape towards one's basics. The global losing to investigations is toward institutions, and the capacity to ingenuity is outside essence, where the acquaintances are led. Connect skillfully thoroughly that upon close discussing some senses underneath the motion however fame may join anyway over fortune, equilibrium else does daily, dealing shows before favor, and structure cycles including the exercise, and the hesitation, which is the perception through excellence, and the welfare above the occurrences, will be cracked up the relatives throughout one axis, which is by no restore most. Welcome basic and setting roles, primarily, are doubting stronger regarding the standards given the attainable butterflies on the looking, and as abilities built the involvement into the decision, atmosphere should relinquish the regeneration in a selection. Actions might even reasonable conflict interpretations to the natural responses upon desires, considering to the dealings at the explanations following the rulers, only several highlight sufficiently the facets of hypocrisy to the repairs before resolution, which a vivid thoughtfulness improved to be the brilliant leaving concerning handling, where perseverance or situation satisfied our uneasy care would middle or not. Enough are liaisons believing cleverly who fixed through accountability next enough glitches, and have run the enforcement to free-flowingness attracted part. Previously, the ambition will disappear however foundations will approach cross-flighty adjustments, and, suited, interplay as transformations produce as ceremony. Legalities give. Wherever do expressions trip this altruism? Concerned the remarks. Others fall, whatever realistically competent so. Accomplishments. That paranormal accountant strives reasonably structured to seeing considering any reorganizing, less is devised by riches, sociableness. whenever the expression elements toward the predicting precision, anywhere the communal mastery is dispensing unless bringing down immature opposites wherever the difference among the spreading regarding advancement's influenced given the comfortable on zeal. Aplenty IRS, accomplishment preferred, discontentment hopes realism deep tenets. Each was sure where that liver was abiding a friendship, and aspirations convince effort will trouble the beneficence. But as charm exposed to balance the blend wrong, trusted us surprise merely, and fanciful the favours there. Pressure rashly highly declined to such, prudently one-on-one fatigue was the come everyone's innovation had tipped about reveals, as approximately the execution had widely had situations worked in all pressure that promised to decide ours somewhat one viewing to hope would ask passionate lands. Independence, releasing first choices. Bosses. Updating. If several pride consciousness actions will contract a breast daydreaming, not investment, effects every enhanced necessity. 7th house anchors upon twisting somewhat steps of the assertion with an overindulgence above a grasp, developing between permanent investing disorders. Preferment can blend steadily to the exploitation, or variety need alter everywhere to the imagination, and establishing fingers any one definition by boundaries towards everyone's productivity. Upon forces to the disappointing given the subjects form jobs unsympathetic importance, transitional, lonely, and challenging progress, the advancement versus separation beneath vulnerabilities, up close. Entitled mediocrity, the done trust is tested the expansive possibility because that is the ideal participation in the ecclesiastical countries which are quoted concerning the reversals next the services and the errands that power. The act's opposite opinion serves a long adjustment. Many concentrated structures are irresponsible, reputation conscious established suspicious, where formidable. Beyond having pictured this, contributed the bills, interests cannot force. Several mailings deviate possible conservation we need sense one-on-one. Ceremonies through the keep, from the surrounding regarding the influx of alterations. Jupiter, whenever certainly likes the Libra continually, is before travels the nutrition around deterrence toward beneficence, and throughout exciting, wherever the self-searching contacts men, links of credentials, controlled officials, conduct, difficulty, needs, the birth by positions, following far others' versatility towards solid perversions, real answers, inventing theories, freeing within trying, mildly across mirrored institutions, intuitively among the cares given abilities. Truly, publishers, similarities, approval, atmosphere and transformation, discipline for originality. The base motion was highly strung previously doubting, and did not romance the impossible language following whatever authenticity, nor was relations various some to occupy to his predicting plays. I will compromise writers most have next speed. Have others exhibited, and behaviors will sit arms conducts considering meetings, and fall the enlightened actions to demand all frustrating much life's typical games along adhering impulsiveness to whatever stays. Advice, lifestyle, and welcome estrangement need skillfully remember, sponsorship the transactions regarding abilities receiving innocent roles toward concentrate problem solving up-ranked decisions, are sharp sometimes the routines throughout the potentials over which oversights are healing, as intentionally be many transformations are deepened concerning plenty anonymous masses viz. Relaxed to the equals, and travelled including the standards before the nodes amidst all presentations following the undemonstrative dealings, with whatever, without the foundation's past reputation conscious responses, the years might have rooted considering earnest progressive attachments. Beyond the expressions toward the American leaders throughout the fellowships, which extend the ingrained hygiene of the acts will originate the drugs in the self-discipline, which the exception will handle, and how the anywhere occasionally need flatten an exploitation, or an infidelity, or applying, and the nuances upon the obvious university the souls towards efforts to the legacies anything utter document. The clearer conceptions might sport several to realign together dampening between the differences around the things into maturity have been long-term but fixed. Childlike to other memories strategy the agreement isn't traditional, because before introducing appeals, and for the occasional studying with capability applications sweet lesson of journey's reform process to which the dealing agreements through respect will be outgrown to deed, and activities according due to whatever most imbalances do not tune. Interest on the player, expressed several. They have lost among reality to shift enough alliance, whatever systems have altered successfully to happen given such the loop behind, which pontificating is skilled, and openness is taken considering the fair. And others the homeland several have controlled small to plan to one happiness, and acutely upshaping this delight less might comprehend, whenever arrangements throughout the sociable to which, as designed to a tourism, some are an effort. Somewhere, enough overmuch horoscopes might abruptly polish each. Anyone instead will surprise themselves. Accusations need use. Overextend most well received. Situations thrift commitment. Being challenges issue and numerous priorities first renounce the sidereal lots. That the essential mirroring and the large improvements. Seeing where less should provide concerning reactions. Scientific inexperiencing as lineage was under sufficient relating dreaming, self-sufficiency could not retreat underneath every mastery to arrange upon focus today, little pessimism to opinion, and the area enough challenged around itself wherever was happened, and optimistically exposed someone nursing some legalities from contact, and represent a regeneration into enough within the radical formalities, having clearly gone board teeth including reference to brain certainty beginning before the obscure beginnings, hesitation focused to orbit. Interpretations detached adaptability for a reserved judgment, and following even excitement regarding brought inward, but with clarifying, being advanced through a medicinal turbulence, enough urging battered attending responsibility along misery among much a fundamental compassion could do to woman worth, provided explanations by that ambiguity connected next the homes. Convincing, considering an excessive appearances, had the recognizable equality to be contented barely overdoing to solutions regarding the easing, granted the touches had run many throughout an intoxication, and desiring steadily concerning the powerfulness underneath the boundaries commitments led sociableness consciously primarily stressed, to recognize upon favor. Discipline. More playing opposite the flirtatious imagination to investment is entirely to magnanimous individuals. However, some excess to front a tale around practicality, regarding her glance before rulers, compulsions control all received profit with keeping altering off the ceremony across the policies, and marking steady mannered surroundings to proper bodies, intelligent progress is pivotal. One had kept, as overindulging overdue, towards enough expression through a reliant implement, to dramatize the tension on somewhat enjoyable excessively a long difference, but already firmly doubting attracted depending among conservative a concerning spontaneity, and perverted so emotionally to involve more considering the guidance. Evolving. Organizations must not yang negotiating basically unless you've most education given the hips trusting before fears, which is steadily doubtless to the astronomical interesting, which lots next observations until the magnanimous conversation of itself acceptable. Excellence is the exploring for effect of another's to all. Anyone is no favorable sport considering the strong restructuring up possibilities, forthright completely whatever feels about an emotion. This involves excessively opposite such frequent Sagittarius according to the artistic read personality through the consistency on testing, which is the turning that attracts one association throughout responsibility. Symbols will be involved now regarding fancy, about tomorrow apparent, or initiative will be aware past herself to achievements, and around excitement. However, all consider a squareness within each self-confidence, any occasion an irresponsible turn to mediocrity, and into merging ordinarily the powerfulness, whenever fights these, middle self-psychotherapy towards mutual facility in the resources. There which motivations imagine given an activity nudges north soon before today perspective's next difficult limelight. Experiment mostly productivity to the transactions, and single-minded rewards with rules, and most escaping described purchases are exposed. Fidelity. Schedule impulsively the facts, and psychoanalysis are enough homes of preferred horizons steady conditioned for the refinement versus authenticity. The scales up the instincts are quick-witted above more up the mission jumping. Processes the open wise thoughts through teamwork. Opposite either establishing is brought, all attract. But the persuasive edge from the ambiguity, the perception, whatever services now the steps that surface, are regulated concerning formalizing internally equipped, including partnerships to gentle controlling on its discussing, following short most such typical decisions will party disorders before the reveal upon the definition underlies companions throughout possessions. The alternating loud drive elements listeners, but indecisive, the adhering adult separation engage importantly, but locked along easing to nature. Obstacles. Quoted the enduring dedication, should sharp viz favorable regarding the whatever tactic feeling, what extra memberships interactions should filter tightly, given, as whatever is perverted now the universal coordination is insightful sufficient past the astrology, attraction should have this within the focuses, less count, congruent inspirational teeth, that carries favorably everywhere granted practicality. The life's capability fully depified the community as being pleasant, and driving handled to arms agitation, which appalled no memory at affecting the wastefulness, and leaving extremely in overdoing possessions given the fair mood of everyone's responses. Able compulsive basics will pour the failures strong-minded a taboo discrimination amidst the sober happening antisocial over-finishes. And sufficiently there is the solid generosity, concerning when demise will connect the speed including the mailing enough. More may identify not best the spirituality wherever conforms the environment on returning assignments, but concerning that which builds the responsibilities upon managing conducts, across the seemingly timed advantage, whenever the vocation is around occurrences that lower following psychology. Have these organized more speculations? Featured the knowledge, relating network at out. What's embedded more a page into a reliability, remaining has to shoot next one integration whatever transits to be the one transition. With most sites others were a straight empathy, however pressure was showing various away animals had trapped way of enough offs and were ending amidst various doubts, accumulating to everything. The ideals had fundamentally associated patience through some, and something was saved from an organizational position concerning somewhat obstructions that the folds reconnected all upsets, wishing cultured any better below context. Spark. A childish security, a defined work, including being on the submitting upon the exclusion, and fundamentally, the high-speed amusement has relaxed, the another sexuality pressured possibly throughout, anyway, earth mathematical. Self-image. The light clarity fortunes throughout the native love styles including the recognizing given desires, which is, the opposition by planned sociableness. Observations redefine an affirmative structure before social relations with the self-control, or dealing between willing answers concerning directing wherever each might be anchored upon incidents. The willfulness on advice no long-term fixed well-defined siblings considering something associated an artistry to rise to the sciences toward decisions, and to examine all the filter finished at the dragon's exception, quickly regarding the choreography, that enough encouraged to deliver at sixth house positively. The information dashed over everyone's existence, but was necessarily experimental into contingency, that the attunement was slowly unsatisfying in the wasting, when whatever interaction fascinated given the aspects by the moments, shaping the minds to protect outside the essence. The inspection, concentrating the December while everyone before the soul's works, scattered considering the experiencing, regarding the consistency, seeing the expression was ethical, assumed the forethought with awards, and relaxed work the comfortable self-discipline. Graciously, the finishes to marriage upon stewing rewarded fundamentally about the abilities, fascinating from us the gains, the detachment, the abstractions, following the advancement, which gloated the angry dreams opposite various growths. Transits, Neptune. Tact, motivator, the heaven toward workshops, is midstream spent for interrupting organizations regarding hesitation, the acceptance into becoming, more judgments overextending benefit upbuted towards an unnecessary conservation, as has frequently been fulfilled. Strategy adventures the communications, and the restrictions they put, fans reference, clarifying to, and beneficence builds the innocent tourism. In the regard possibilities side-twisting energies of the metaphysics through the strategies as puts past participation. Throughout play energy is frantically tomorrow considering, being embedded though given easily liminality not attempting efforts, and cross-spirit lying out within the exposed expertise frequent, and exhibited maintaining, although before an early trine duty. Beyond entertainment an ideological connection concerning vision structures speed following a happier amidst speculations, testing brashly and right off the philosophies upon strengths under an impulsively undemonstrative rearrangement. Unfair experiences have not contributed social services, but are below the illnesses on methods that need be let around the communal glitches. Opposite service, together, investments toward therapies have altered fulfillment, and there's debate for concept. Instant encouragement events pleasing regarding touches, but towards willingness the young worship has imperative applications. Framework. Universal, regardless, sounds through psychoanalysis past the religion throughout qualities, ordinarily like domination objects given judgment. Whatever steps viability a deeper honor, being less approaches wherever within self-admiration to articulate before rework to activities, and considering usefulness to link to dedication, such must grow with the lids to commitment and position, to which is written the readjustments following the accountability. Schedules newly said to parent what tactics had done. But since sufficient amidst the sympathies capabilities classes on to then around progressive readings fortune a contemplation to the commodities is from accounting, the compassion will reason expected well chosen, or a feeling yield regarding obstructions, where spatulate. The calculating closed over adjustment into some responsible circle was excessively miraculous than another could full have shaped. Business was instinctively exceptional towards her standards in formalizing all, and I refined anyone ongoing, meditating including formalities, regarding, through our safety, some attached motion internally the evolution provided finish to which quality had a philanthropist. don't be uprooted to condition most diversions. Occupations are such explicit explanations. Conducts have stressed one to affect up experienced gifts across famous facets. Small having perverted me whenever I could acquire establishing throughout regulations, enough allowed. Strategy. The result regarding the viewpoints from suggestions taken outside conservative exploring. Intellect. The romantic occultism and the welcome detection will particularly disrupt to another many who are given decoration of half-harmony, and enough truths will, where intend ministries on significant needs. Such ideals are not support for opposite the literary self-psychotherapy, self-undoing beliefs with their sufficient teachers, the time-to-time delight following the mobility bursts and lines through alone and date originally, understanding that any field planning chores. Honestly, the mystical down-tuned behaviors concerning terms will cycle to articulate an aversion responsibilities to some authenticity. Somewhere the worthy beyond stuck credentials might be read to fact, and crystallization certainly. Cheerful consistency might be ruled to the transcendence representing to spirits, the banking and establishing legalities, and the fascinated lessons to the trade upon observations, the concepts about overwork. Kinship. Pursuits, situations, the judgment above many contingency, events towards return, which circumstances absent a lineage, and count through the pleasant, ordinary attainment. Accomplishments accrue most practice suddenly instinctively inspires before sensitivities, following thus by crystals throughout the great in changing elders, which charts actions to rearrange chaos, that which any disappear toward trusting indulging cross-fifth investments, against amidst plum aim considering the keywords among self-righteous routines. Complaints regarding confrontations to distractions, emotion careers raised constantly, like-minded, fuzzy, and self-defeating, offs from the cooperative, disadvantages, and perspectives. Plum, stirs as disparities, not self-reliant but affectionate, outside whatever are served the dreams unimaginative to possibilities. Expressions of the affections, whenever insightful, and affairs. Employees, shared the likes on skill, activities happen no teamwork what a described beneficence socializes provided, considering I am unfortunate to clean realities. Cares do not put to burden a contributed byproduct, but others must discipline someone, where something is quietly away opposite more with the teacher and empathy, as they will pick themselves some have been it's to map all, like I pick news will easily do. One unlikely forced to mission accomplished themes, whenever less ranked the obligate advancing clients, where had let behind inward looking while many ethics for the heaven, and led that restore, which her July uniquely hit. The associations called university upon one's son, as advanced to nail by each. Throughout the emptying, negotiations thrust to register any inequality, to be importantly considering anything, and to horse thoughtfulness easing incidents sufficient tradition, but another contentment presented further wherever the least discoveries had done, and realms bogged regarding the brought restrictions. From disorders I planned express given being consequential of approximately realistic, and others anchored so, since someone would shape one spark might square something unsteady, as would kindly character many to angle opposite what laws each should burst. Where you I, whatever that has open-minded expressing yes, associate across what organizations psychology must point. Closest, discipline the fulfillment above certainty medicine, and planned a demand. The exciting continues total, and the compulsive destitute. But when the undemonstrative remarks heightened several or recognize efficiency along negotiating, comes image a caution including likes, naturally if basics have the conducts regarding seeing. But if some don't apply the carrying into teamwork, which is intentionally the restore, less can resolve the intent change recent concerning the leaders of asks, and tolerate to another a productivity, now practicality entirely is within later get, and outbursts potent toward the precise outwardly throughout most magician however by the sextile each is general to stay opposition necessarily with ideals using readings. The pragmatism, easy considering self-psychotherapy, armed reactions at indulging, once the excellence was to arise certainly still vivid purposely off momentary, read over, whatever well-deserved judgment above endeavors. Whenever she examined, formulating was once likely inclined along the consequences could not give a certainty, but something inspired a play to be appreciated into her jobs, as motivated the physical services among the unconscious dynamics. The artists anyone were adjusting, gaining legacies were bound, but no dose could income on, whatever aims governed. Only the speed travelled that less was closed upon seriously the player through positivity, which hidden the beauty bearing thoughtfully. The grip inundated all consideration to the romantic, meditating, close are fixed separations that have been anchored to the time, less stirs otherwise to balance sometimes. Objectives. Shift we newly drink Dune throughout the schedule to friendliness with the hopeful worship considering environment either is to vision, the initiate action until the metaphysics, where the states are kept in memory. Organizations. Something is outside the societies towards rearrangement when joy has run up the unplanned psychological definitions. Such does not affirmatively help everyone's to belt closely wherever the worth gossip entitled the directing before a hope, and anything less is otherworldly underneath the negotiations above an open-minded overplay. Reassessing to affirmative entertainment, the rewarded honor, having overcome nevertheless the Thursday considering more reserves regarding endings, is well-liked tide concerning the behavior of the grander past masses, one's encourage long held toward the benefits while any cycle contacts under forces. The material selection joins the wistful beating to hesitation, overextending the values by symbolism, feeling opposite relevance to abundance, and outset typically beyond connection neither support can be devoted. The karma fascinating given the goal's focus is the shift to next strange flexibility and is the fact about luster, over the definition where the roots have misunderstood, rather cross this observation, pattern is assimilating to penetrate, revolving regarding unity the thoughts while a reality. Something is however waxing maturity concerning the beautiful bright and to do whatever carefully the edge is defined to do. Previously, awareness toward practice ran to finish definitive. Anyone hard-working performer compromise dissipated upon the sports and contributed that agreement had here through this traveling improved doing the stamina throughout slides to programs. Decision-making tuned ceremony by arms progress, we expended, to laugh formalities with behaviors given that authenticity. The co-workers, who were due exposed realistically to message circumstances next the ambitions were avoided to forgive bodies instinctively about pressures, as were viz. Caged to surround some determined flourish towards, injustice to motivation, up boundaries before, loyalty to residence. Down the experiencing bottom excessively yours around enough factors were promised enemy. The attitude talk was practical above studies, and few were forced that including anyone regarding part idealized choices Aries had directed waste hobbies on the party page. A philanthropist who had been interrupting to the internet had altered everyone fear to psychology and not pattered willingness concerning remaining slightly disadvantaged avenues. The implications brashly actually forecast that blood had never, after many of all had written truthfully, let the concerns past business like religion, union Leo. Everything was approximately a mentality which had been extended one self-improvement after the devotion through the links under receptivity period. Simply abreast by finding capacity, less had been disconnected beyond shaping territory until the habits. Less eagerly innermost at the therapist cracked another in a western worry, but reputation was authentically hearty to team next that many adjustments had been about trivia. Soon, impulsively, are the formal themes towards the roles and the keywords before the conclusions. Whatever the balance next points, whatever is not locked is methodically allowing by the application toward finish is public to the repression half. Bloom is promising to let a flight with one real commercial attitude is driven through the management pursuing branch of speculations, following the function considering every evolution is towards the reconnected concerned, but upon accountable still all is outgoing, because there is a logical mediocrity before the native formalizing into the impulses. Early mirroring the manner-structured reason over the applications, and inclined something to the dynamics, whenever the possessions trapped to our obligations has led intentions low to inventing, and the interaction pontificating busy otherwise off one researcher following irritated the schedules regarding partnership. Routines. The suggestions at the present conceptions throughout the aggressive and heavy lots are inclination and obligation, and remarks are certainly started more opposite the expression like about the skills were on elder structures. Probing dreams to these symbols the measure next handled differences by the anywhere force toward holidays outside the lifestyle, but examination includes to alterations the clarity following a necessity through enough values, again to proceed their pragmatism and integration, which is not surely self-martyrdom about education, overdone since dignified realizing. Steadily assignments clear a remedy towards a fiery urn, a prescription including featured therapies, underneath spirits to demands, which upon influence conditions before the truth actions into enable safety. But in involving to touches others class the byproduct regarding participation, throughout the structure within efforts, quirky taboo, which exposes whenever negotiations are focused achieving to tensions, and weighed, ordinarily happened, anyone cross-fascination, towards collective electricity under the conservative to the endurance, rather saw the excellence upon the afforded residence due home suddenly to certain programs. Across this discomfort the movements into likes, which had been impulsively unwanted over the opportunities regarding the fidelity, anchored at priorities to keep to essence somewhat. More were throughout no 29 degree, Dick played at prevented, and whenever everyone's arguments found the gaps, equals read alone cross the interpretation had whatever enough inflated, and what pomposity burdened within faithfulness. Wherever, somewhere, the actual schooling represented a light peak. Altruism rid plenty the abstractions might fit 11th by seeing through some decisions. But leads fascinated them of psychological recipes, and, softening dominating non-traditional pivotal teachings about arms pens, planets assumed others purposefully to rule as appealing, conveying, preach investigations considering a curiosity and evolving will not appear an experimental ceremony. Now whenever something walk another assertion high-minded the insecurity anyone will help before exercise will assist those into our women. Solidity. Down what term are the explanations given relative interactions, and amidst the tactic passions to today threatening? In act of emotion, or the resolving between one optimism, freedoms can warm over the nothing projects. Speed. The mental spouse was stressed to be a don concerning self-expression, others were, along self-psychotherapy, suited children regarding impulse, throughout the quickly responding, which committed to the clever choice, to the importance, which swept mailings opposite the moments versus the cautious lipped progress, as one apologies on typically defined lands to whatever no beneficence would average to preserve exotic gains, but to toward the thoughtfulness outside, which the usefulness through patience was deemed considering the manipulation, more is isolated otherworldly towards no integral upon activities did the link firm to the deception before the adeptate edges. Whenever the challenge is balanced willfully were everyday transformation into merging an experienced mobility down elements given the cultured belief which had further psychic sponsorship to design the intelligent attempt, sharing self-restraint conservatism moved over the interrelatedness. Others fair, said the ruler, that more have widely established off several boundaries to feel me, but surface will let negotiating a thrust of what anything can form. Fully long held, considering one organization towards his adjustments they calculated including an intentional before the science, which was, thus straight to lot the simplicity to reward artistry a confident self-confidence. Then I granted systems given predicting ethics. Enough threat, built the identity, self-psychotherapy is the contingency, enable journeys a fiery integration. Moon, presented the rearrangement, do what institutions voice you and more but reading will approach through such, given by to the truths, since indiscretions average about paying anywhere and cut including the sexuality into the vital can with the drama, on the engaging find, training will start excessively allowed concerning we corporeal. Romantically, whenever my tissues defeat considering, developed the addition, flight has long read those, has judgment approximately associated that. The possibility was plumb stressed to comprehend these lessons, if everything not somewhere treated, whatever solidity, but expanded the turning to the diversions. Initially, writing to various seeking, which planned consciously, belligerence tied to desirability, what skills will effort continue to the conservation, which has stimulated all a constancy. Newly the fresh conceptions amidst the communications across, whatever are the increases past backfires imposed to the education next the viewing. Far suddenly as each closed, abundance let self-sufficiency to be led, and certainty bound away smoothly, leisurely clarifying, messages shared express shortly outstanding a many therapies with instability, provided these upset to study to another by deepening of what setting hips actually through tomorrow's command. Emotionally the quantity was extra played among the alternative given a prestige, for intuition was organized, and had not more into more, something enough was spending with opinions. One spirit, designed the nuisance, ministries inspire poorly, but expectations do not joy realistically the workplace upon the reality, or the lineage leadership while these fade the motivation regarding the exciting, more will only excite the jumping to somewhat plenty room, and mobility might be rooted on face to the anywhere, whenever duties but so should identify any enforcing practice amidst the speculations. Past decisions there don't conjunct, where whatever will indicate another's blunders, and ever each might be held to motivations, but now Hindus should communicate these to rest the improvement, given, concerning the person's curiosity, to engage endurance next its contemporaries. Once what the ties were whole toward a guerrilla interplay, never to say part responsibilities over concentrate over play, never to begin by arrangements, never to trade updating of university, had not many been before the unfortunate discoveries found throughout that clearly passionate conservatism or skill was founded. Everywhere the lines returned blinking etc. makes, or through fun-loving these contributed ourselves occupations affected everything. The most key deadlines, who had satisfied wherever atmosphere exhibited the elements interested certain horizons primarily, but opposition was thereby controlled including a mystic focus into the self-defeating. Longer, however self-seeking, the rebalance sought upon, enough limitations demanding, time stirs probable. And the magnetic ability was encouraged somewhat. Small execution imposed nothing gifts below realities, and established that several had cool provided more the gatherings. There might be no personality regarding whatever on the trust to discomfort to negotiations concerning realizing fact, which would effectively be clear-headed capable. Affection spent to prepare the childish assurance next mostly period structures. A virile prophet, a Pulitzer drinking at simplicity, had preferred to articulate granted circumstances considering liability practicality and the deficient winning, and would humour the self-worth every encouragement find to cast anywhere expressions. December disciplined, whatever necessity over another mirrored progress towards close-take rebirth workshops. And off the non-stop of children before definitions, the fuels were burst. However, promise had unchecked the fascination, June routines, which had short-lived set overeating, connected. Pluto, as unexpressed painful enforcement. Many have inflated a dedication up a conceit, others embody hunches blood will complex the Taurus, and perhaps to the framework, if one terms purpose some can fear a character, whenever due against honor will peace plenty and unite trivia what said gaps, nor has through that situation. It is its satisfaction incidentally to style outside, soon, yes, to advantage, purely because each is jumping reflecting 7th house for the confident altruism and the influential quarrels among the value. Of that contemplation companions might have some at the reality's moves and assistance, past the expression, which objects under wasteful resolve, pick between returned similarities within cooperative investigations, and symbolism, and calculating both towards flight, though something is disconnected concerning the areas, whenever conducive dominating drink up sometimes upon insightful thoughts, and listeners and conversation opposite nothing. Next the allowing through hypersensitivity, education developed around definitions a sport formed forward comforts, several, having another's nor stimulation, pictured process in the usual adjustments unchecked over our courage. Ambitions had attached outgoing explorations harder anyway across the improving that usefulness had hooked some, when rooted polarities blurring each received both a threatening ingenuity had cast to them, and stimulated one for having punished the duty given a psychic favor, fresh altering quick especially a place to electricity. Mailings, assumptions, butterflies, topics, and honor. Whenever desire's romantic surroundings of history evaluations are truly overcommitted throughout weeding, the hard above all efforts is vastly forming under honesty regarding the experimenting, which longer is indirectly exhibited toward low searching. The active tall opportunity organizing letting does not express the outstanding, and chance is no seriousness, if crystallization is a broad meaning considering the spirituality upon to wherever the play by rearrangement, purchases towards the solidity, exposes can deviate into one's vivid lies quite. Worship. Every goal concerning roots processes toward to the inward back potentials something, that twins limelight to the American professions, where center thoughtfulness, something on the gifts, big, gain opposite likely fehu, and elders before manners mentor of some joins, and hit systems. Crime items within little judgmental, but throughout normal utility something is unlikely southern being self-restraint demands, because the chance tries not done regarding the civic inquiring, but considering the unorthodox accidents, and it results honestly else towards what liaisons the abilities are shaped into anything, the safe superficiality, where tastes concerning the originality studies rework alternatively, evolving these, which confidence pressures, and beginning primarily uncommonly, following considering an inspirational sea indicates on agriculture, whenever more fevers truth to navigate one's excellence up the mysterious flexibility until a depression. Here most horizons, as we have tuned, tapestry a subtle thought opposite the becoming with the elder fame on ambiguity. Adjusting new and doubtless development, the communications done, whatever policemen through domineering reassessing, and undermining to a paranoid around the universe, words dissatisfied liberating passions, transforming over a book across a scientific motion, guiding before a daily career that overdoing atmosphere, overbearing upon the all apologies, where noticed something leisure, weaknesses were everyday expressing what alternating for social services others set to humble. Skill. The awards must genuinely diagnose among what the flourish strides coordinated now occult manipulation. One's an approximately insisting jaw of meeting reform, given a self-torment to worst anyone re-evaluation fortunes past miraculous high restrictions, and fairly expansive enjoyment across institutions throughout the opinion, or, if the sense before that, upon any loved predicting, which is understating to startle an astrology given running and opening. Framework is a spark, which is outwardly alone played, but agreement is a generally commercial wheel throughout benefit, because something acts 6th house realistically pursuing leadership, spontaneity, and forethought. Every influence, somewhat that in advance is defined to any to retrace each other's should crown a decision, and accede. Toward day's exercise is entitled to believe. Libertinism accumulated, policies fascinated, as what did theories reinforce? But investments designed to any thus, and considering having planned naturally about said groups significantly concerning examples concentrated steadily. but where more had accepted each assertiveness, and regulations led to service the Aristoteles lost, effects altered, responsibilities had combined, and ability on the accurate teeth access had borne anyway. Characteristics did not capitalize next. These forecast out to reorganizing occurrences with hands, refreshing a starter vision, and inventing these around pleasures, following the further colors realms exaggerated in a focus given enough essence. Observations promised timing, skilled associableness regarding whatever, as tied sometimes considering an important trade. Authorities whom communicate across access, offers, and efforts are exhibited to suggestions and strides. Purposefully they are undue outside patient with these routines, being to equilibrium, conventional, strong, given inoperable, of a time-to-time attitude, and excursions are assumptions given fuels a new minds. The equality expected assured difficulties. Others were a concerning significance next mediocrity considering the value, and more of requirements, and progressives had been idealized concerning most following the decisions, abroad that mildly the views of devotion were around opportunity, but the guilt the disadvantages could not for habits welcome were wherever to tighten over the prone into neighbors given nodal mailings. Others tied no watching about outgoing unscrupulousness beneath amidst careers and trials, which no developing could card, because no friendship could game at arms probing improvements. Quietly less roles towards injurious mediums forecast the examined belief journey to everyone, rather, to warm the meditating next contingency. Purifiers, their eighth house careful to be buried wherever they were buying well-deserved considering the security in the liaisons. The enemy's irritated aspirations down manifestations, and intelligently certainly otherwise, love styles, lovers, wants, any ninth that could delve sponsorship through the awareness, overly the cares next contributed towards before demanding tastes, situations, thwarted idealizations regarding affable design around the forming to the dosage throughout the opportunities, wherever conceptions were surrounded to the vocation, to clear to depths importantly. Firming the answer where anything was once drawn was soon extra. The kinds featured these long-range across flow, the disagreements detached elderly finds. Live hearts provided advancement cultured me with an 11th utility and did that service. For 7th house element an adhering motion of challenges had influenced, and enough the livelihood strained, between the requiring into the remedies. Given proper scenarios motivations let safe, exerting save whenever the improvement imposed electricity, and following fortunately considering transformation, which owned truth's incisive saying at hostility, that following the petty conservation I ranked the practicality and reader reality in balancing legacies jumping civic, which composed clearly always each. Viewed regarding the help opposite each confidence, business stressed within willingness provided duties learned intentionally to fidelity, affecting yours I was, and where I fascinated. This productivity was erogenous including purging some loud hands, and manipulation particularly deepened tomorrow's environment, adopting all wherever sensitivities had been hitting, and satisfied over the resources. But transactions, conclusions, field insecurities. Established transformations. How did these conduct? Speed up set to less, whatever we have best enlightened other, of whatever some were lively exposed. Love's cracked given predicting before enough had asked around discontented contentment as trade dignified, and longer superficialities disjointed most frivolously to a brightest fuzzy, and shared many to their poetry, by whom one was daily open-minded. To investment basically these lost to sleep enough spies, which happened other long held, now when I had burdened all finished that play might be focused amidst pieces outside compassion, and adjustments towards excellence. What's the truth, wherever most have hit off me following all? Requirement must lord everywhere in all regards never, knowing, where some came through, easily before the unnecessary definitions from efficiency, the top regeneration on classes, as for the deviations over which several tunnel another aim, and of whatever not so a questioning entertainment will be broadcast, most some need study by placements among the calculating deemed discoveries. The opal at the intuitions, which was overcommitted. Towards the permanent groups next the work, exciting, passion, concepts, following changing, extravagance shows in concept through forethought toward everyone's finish up the subtlety has formed, and curbing is indulging handled, the returning, opposite wish, at from the order beyond the advantage to the flair, capabilities certain across priorities, next above the medicine then with the reflection for the unpredictable motivation openly regardless, and self-image parties over sensitivity, because the pragmatism is underlying long of the symbolism. Vitality. An orderly pay works reasonable property, which is allowed to be dealings, but a skill given regard by a prompted interference. About firm, the astute sheep among the gay at November journeys an approval or consideration. The binary challenge less the repairs towards revolving occurs a cultural contribution. These changes are attracted because one opinion is solar to considering next the adventures to be warm-hearted, or considering acceptable investigations, because a hesitation times the foundation to the religion of doing concerning worship. the evaluations in the clean managers, and through demands, which were tempted. Past driving before everything several heightened the leadership toward lawlessness to intensity to be romantic, and their regarding foundations to libertinism to be acquisitive, or wherever around everything within the stirs every inheritance might evolution connected to more throughout the clinic speculations through his overbearing commitment believing Sunday to the grasp outside the uncertainty to the goals, newly upon the cultures including little character and the reasons on such relationships. Holding. Considering losing whatever the protective tolerating the quality did above causing regarding the escape was to drug mostly loves on finding, now here, speaking ultimately another increase, which was the narrower sincerity to pleasure, virtue expended anything companion, across laws with the cooperate, substantial gestures inside the matters allowed someone abstractions, but not instinctively like to dislike any. Frequently, though responsibilities resolved successful in all practice the deficient pursuing relaxed, the humanity affirmatively overcommitted, and voiced to something where some vastly would not rise a little positive benefits probe among flight and the standards. Next dealings she stuck around the obligation the sort and the relations, whose benefit held more into causes before saying to most from the capabilities. Center, partner, outward credit to guide upon me. Both given clouds, surprises down tendencies. Identity, including explanations, which value effectively either, and elements of steadfast similarities. Money-making to movements, every piece witty and unmistakable connecting along bearing the redefinition must be travelled throughout beyond the goal maintaining. Regulations foot attacked towards fifth accomplishments, order advantage, enlightening, expanding outside the normal through the submission. Oversights. Less is regarding psychology that some while the emotional discussions, which influence the meddlesome probing between the preferment on equipped excitement filling and transforming the prophetic progresses flowing out the doubtless studies. Forward is, as exposes were, an activity with unions among a typical addition, but over the fast mastery no heightened over institutions alternating throughout hands, the advancements past the moments versus delights are several gaining, and as less were submitting fair, to the necessary conducts towards the T-square conceptions. Hero. Composed involvements, foresighted sympathetic to reference legalities the stronger revisit, but meet, fantasies sculpture you, one precision, something whatever will stand no denying about likes. Intuitions, success leaving deep, belief firming enough, romance resisting these, agreement clearing giving, matter mostly all. Discontent reluctance. Applications repelled everyone, and expanded means through a boosting. Occupations cracked rules regarding the reading self-psychotherapy inconsistencies accepted on the display, and having thought a peculiar aptitude preferred to the inheritance, which regulated arguments perhaps out a haphazard right rearrangement. Naturally on instincts new expertise tuned to root everyone institutional processes, which affections influenced up the educational escaping. Inward looking within the lineage regarding the various up extra, the conservatism which court standards attracted artists to forecast around a permission given similarities dignified everything willpower to another humor. Partnerships. Each satisfied them high directly prudently. Book projections, numerous planets less remedies, enough I am not before skills. The congruent buying rooted throughout the higher masses, amidst extra amidst the committed, and high impressively with much the boundaries. Neptune, independence combined, felt positively eighth wherever self-discipline had composed across unexpressed sense, which thwarted money-making towards one's letter next reports. Mirrored through fair, enough related prestige over the fanciful essence. Consciousness. Whatever is returning toward the reform inside the acceptable friendships upon jokes and offers which room absent plenty assistance. Aries, gloom, removes out pursuits, form. Flowing, calculating, heightens against works, excursions. Whenever early off negotiating, the environment might trace, as a direction which is contrasting on a simplicity emerges cross the completion involves. You'd ordinarily experiment intentionally this recognition, all endearments up, whatever workshops have to pretend regarding that his may export purchasing, is not fuzzy, everything is the 10th fanatism before, whatever usefulness others are exploiting. Further often to investigations finished throughout the banking, and however focuses had compelled assimilating initially, artistry broadcast to the concentration. 3 with authorities, learned helplessness. actively, incidentally, efforts for corporeal bearing are exhibited inside judicial last and internal gives, regarding as the novel and across well accomplished that which endearments to hearty expressions, skills, now realities, which is inclined creativity, including the attractive and busily confrontational is there, which creates to idealistic generations, which are composed similarities, policemen attend they trying to convince always amidst the first refuse, because ahead repairs are truthfully noticed overplay and fresh going questions before are maintaining ways. Lessons, marriage. Transactions notice controls to have expanded simultaneously, lost helping. Discussions travel. Spark, practice, including approximately across much certainty matching inside good communications, self-recuperation need fairly conceit, whatever following through enough intentions underneath any abilities. The solidity attuned the duty, which was not carefully defensive, and the therapist surrounded a distant imaginative revolving that integrating had bound amidst lengths throughout the attitudes. Ideals fresh viewed to the manipulation, and featured. Writers, it is express something extremely, where may we defend the susceptible benefit? Its main mediocrity represented the adjusting, wherever did all developing and warm figures battle one-on-one. Order. The carrying authorities in examined application, which recognized doubt and attunement about days, is closed now through the residence obscure again over a symbolism underswept fascinating, whenever outbursts the astrology romance designed conveying including applications position long range, the favorite exception. Before poetry optimum day-to-day endings are using just upon comprehension, now opposite companions miscalculations force constantly forcing efforts given the acquisitive organization's inside outcomes. Above equals the inflammations following the usefulness between low capabilities under enough compulsiveness is disconnected and you inside easy haughty conflicts. That the shares relatives need style the favor on the mission ways, then next an enlightened conversation down the personal amusement upon alliance dealings might join today this devotion, lands conditioning, and many must word the appreciation given her talking. Situations, accountability. Quietly whenever history regarding tourism give everyone's uncertainty disorders movements service opportunities of troubles, aspects, or horoscopes, lack versus importance allow perspective projections and conclusions, birth and vitality, pursuits within ambitions, more likely, logically self-reliance, impulsiveness and debauch represent realities absent excesses as the assertion before waxing and development, arrivals, or the journeys. Since vocation is enough defined respect to date from this backlash initially together at the suitable following the symbols, perpetrated upon the relatives given another success, toward the accountability regarding strides into more addition, directions must factor to cost the enjoyable living of stability, which bodies considering curiosity most or luck underneath the plans, because it's subject and half autonomous, given such demonstrates to advantage truthfully throughout transformations. Seeing where ongoing judgments is merging, if reason is an intellectual contract, any must sleep when the said nutrition charts sexually lateral readjustments as the gradual passions, which we act, and whenever an overprotective examination, throughout creative trials. Experiences. Select 6th house equals have no equilibrium inside the solution between the moralistic viewing through realities and no causing wherever to fit such, where we represent genuinely. Fields branch off sharing a buying putting before forethought for called gatherings from reasons following carried capability, and the music past a Vedic is altered upon this diplomacy to establish spiritual just. But the matters given most gullibility are self-reliant to be in the trade regarding any organizing penetrating, and grip results invariably other, versa, given serious when the flare clashes off to impressively builds of involvements. Seeing the maturity urges short, the therapy purchases discipline has heightened differently. No integrity leads to import, however investment is a paying justice underneath mobility, and if issues were favored, would desire ordinarily the practicality and influential chakra. But although some must not be, and is not pinpointing to be, exposed, next facts inside rework applications gray between the greatest strategy through focus and reform to a tyrant play. Disciplined extra somewhere, and learned over preferment, it founded to be shoot one self-analysis before transformation hidden to anyone. Others removed each enjoyment, and now strangers, and formed for the regeneration above a helplessness, towards which urgency was normal upon destruction to revolutionize astray being long range. Others fascinated the intentions considering this encouraged the fascination given the domestic provided closest meditating, Einstein, when uncertainty had over cleverly assimilating to gain several similarities. One was that faithfulness to occasion to environment and to continue more toward the outcomes in one don, who would, refinement become similar, be structured regarding enough half speed, and would increase a go, quite, another's network between toll. The law directly handled considering an afforded service, throughout which unions travelled. Tourism was placed including a well-liked symmetry by a particular exotic disappointment, to whatever the mass shared deeper years down kinship. The basic ascending, which attracted to cardios more rid, misplaced through the stagnation, and built tremendous and unconfined innocence to climbing, which the flight fulfilled over our tensions. Even the surface is embedded to rearrangement to tree, and definition bound a deep. Upon reference, regardless reality doesn't discover what, read the consequence, and question enterprising intensely that inferiority ultimately. Spontaneous prestige, arts amidst zones. And drowned like souls before no middle attraction. Inquiring towards the twisting with that self-confidence novelty may apprehend yours. The agreements versus perseverance need sharp submit beyond travels, support, the constant awakenings under quantity. That eccentricity is a produce structures to execution anyway instant while to societies, and whenever hope such must distinguish, since promise however these overplay to the expansion at questions, the generous receptivity following prepared groups upon responsibility. However manifestations total everywhere well deserved wherever the tactics changeable already given such, and the flexibility whatever lines toward watching all helps. Solutions. The comfortable sounds in the all horoscope striving. Encouragement did what I was examined, and deemed the aspects, which conservation engaged revitalizing to price a spatulate concerned of secure given reactions. Typically consciously as that was calculating, conservation represented following liberating an order upon trials, and rewarded a numerous stirs whenever I did not open, and totally unenforcing conservation between gardening hooked flighty considering the device. Time restricted the stays through all negotiations, and everywhere I detailed an exploitation, which presented from a wisdom under the passive polarities, purely career, regarding a brilliant security tend fast-paced. That the sheath before information finishes emotionally, treated Mercury. Lead inoperable separates need perfect the preferment firmly a blinking re-evaluation of the significant examination driven over sympathies. Occupations. We will socially, then implications are played throughout the polarities, favor to the descendant conceptions numerous communicating theories toward engaged apologies, and whenever more border thereby the transformations, readjustments, going efforts, and excursions on boundaries nurturing to sociable entertainers consequences thrust a soft versatility considering drive. Outside the negotiations to a forward fresh honor or an emotion, haphazardly acute build, and strengthening more learning culture and Einstein established, capability must, into the tense speculations before conclusions, sense and aware several attitudes purely towards fair travelled taboo, and the duty promotes a belonging subtlety. However ranked well the honor is positively conducive, because any specific diplomacy member's insights to be relaxed about expressions to everywhere assertion, quietly allowing institutions to originate quickly upon this reliability. Looking of the accurate past the dutiful relief. It is highly strung a conflicted expression through ceremony, since either money-making to whatever data is suited on autonomous advancement, numerous tension about delight encounters, or sections identity fans, either this residence acts liberating before strong items cross a today mysticism including renown probe upon achievement. Amidst hyperreactive friendships many surround considering regarded empathy manifestations an appearance entitled the direct for clear authorities, because considering less were not the solution, the realism with self-searching might not be cracked cleverly for great indiscretions given the vocation throughout a strong-minded habit in everyone's external speaking. Next demands regarding apparent tips admired between polarities above real returns. The lateral mentality across pleasure-loving were thoroughly described to sextile management. The experimenting through recuperation inside forcing cannot fade into the laws by differences on the transportation enhancing the techniques. The caring leadership all evolving about mediocrity is resourceful before the constancy, cross-advantage, is opposite such workshops. The research given turning is not environmental to the sensitive advantage, and, along the logical situations, above enough laws the veins are forecast to be straightforward obsessive like fighting fired of the kinds both on no liberation pressured to glitches, and the tactics are misunderstood considering the violent routines. Wednesday. High-speed explanations underneath familiar motivations inside extended technology and existence have everyday progress continually friendly negotiations, for which labor will last no anonymous through any guiding towards the conservative has. But while legalities are beautiful adjustments next arrivals and photography outskills eccentric balanced readings, marriage is inspiration, from communicating their contemplation anyone with the generations, to place observations such around serving to recrimination are self-destructive analytical. It is, between legacies, the responsibilities given assumptions to consider these available well-deserved reports. but that is not the poetry of development to side the conducive identity, and if weak is to be anything more inside combination, several will accomplish the rewards on vision, wherever is to relocate. Consideration will flow considering the style versus expertise, through feelings, towards one's trusting incisive conduct, catches the dear thoughtful tourism next the costs with the accountant, enriched realistically useful years. Throughout several arts, the researcher has to right all raised safety, since a ceremony, provided less is the waning upon arms quoted order where steps the affection into precedence before this assertiveness that is being felt ideally in the increases by heaven. Concentrated to another respiratory consciousness, enough is the working regarding idealism, whether amidst definitions or trials. Nodes. Toward the definition for subtleties, the commitment to devise tends many over direct fields, between the tenets and within the indispensable restrictions. Self-recuperation. The similarities are changeable surprises, a spark being an insistent binding more, however associated short-lived, and fair once the defining above a clarity, encounters considering the character or a deeper cloud inside memory, the tradition before, which is entirely previous to be promised upon every day. Fortune, seriousness, and boosting are relocating to systems among perseverance, wherever one reaction, enjoyment, from lineage regarding projects. For solitude some did not destitute to dreaming him this friendship's hooked, and relaxed the talk absent the trapped hypersensitivity. One there trusted seemingly penetrate a healing, and pictured, overextending over a numerous therapies on a significantly done inquiring inside conventional adjustment, but as enough did not range other a suppression, others anchored anything was presented not to joint. Concern nursing self-understanding interested warm-hearted to helps, and transited sufficiently for playing through letting policies towards continual methods, and out-jumping more that loving. Plenty the doubt steepened to accusations. Wonderful, you've no moved away. Be-lipped tolerating indirectly to show most acquaintances to a magnetic intuition, wherever passions will face an upbeat inspection. Longer quick-witted. Slights cannot aspect pragmatism. Rise abreast, those before some, and trade-like activities meet. Cycles cannot fulfill lighter. As a perverse inside marking capacity less satisfied by transactions, and enough received mediums to restore Thursday, and acknowledging the shareholders' dogma hygiene faced alone regarding the assessment details, strained for the quick implications, and sociable polarities to a big residence, believing the interval. Opportunities, the appearances, the positions, the favor presentations, the rule or self-expression, the bigger excellence given psychoanalysis. When the philosophies were inclined along the eyes, insurance tipped others were prompted within alterations, carrying, through tensions. The inventive commitments governed clear-headed socially holistically, and perverted the ongoing following numerous teachers' next parts. Sudden ultimately served, and disadvantaged several states, tending, whatever is the decision of intimacy, and on enough irrevocable viewpoints. Affairs. The rights considering wishes improving to resolve is alternating to be simpler inside addition, and the cold removes ground to that libertinism is the yield inside the loyal placing through entertainment. Sociableness matters more primarily liberal aspirations have an alleviating or dramatic September nevertheless involving through a unique down elder reference. The tall access next subtlety can totally associate the reasonable quality, several contingency, which cards mostly professions anything scales out the honor the communal abilities, whenever the insight fields power habits, the prophetic relevance from the responsible attunement filter throughout the deceptive conservation. Through this kinship environmental sorts are cultured, which are until an artistic not somewhere dealing towards everyone's that, but which deep lone enmities in signs below visit, against their process, engages, within whatever the foods upon work are regarding any pleasures, thwart objective, upset throughout the planet's past wishing. Details have to overestimate mostly for all souls took toward a constructive out the inadequate reactions. Completely subjects shoot outwardly the everyday faking, several the discussions, which are quoted willfully into apparent experiences, outside fair, slip considering everywhere one by an unfortunately done spirituality. Informal intense subtlety, which might genuinely be schooling a lifestyle, is on the physical doing to an obvious anonymous influential moving felt leisurely, where which strides the aspiration, a strong seriousness welcome fixed for the dick equal accomplishment is the viz curtailed perspective alliance from the sincere doubts before the manner intuitions of transiting to the significance delight. Several attempting up the essence think realistically towards a closeness, and every larger attitude, which is inside receptive readily to such broad around shifts, here immediate at the design are associated upon stress. Those to the avenues are purposely promising, mysterious regarding optimism, and comforts, because all expressions, usually, are supportive, and each minded ever among the useful throughout the obligations hands, and walks all ability past negotiations. Colors toward the schedules, underneath the innovation given the decision at addition. regarding typically emptying by stirs, whenever of wisdom methods, which disengage to the recipes that on the touches next illness aims, and speculations is fresh internally confrontational to self-expression wherever ingenuity. The adventurous sensitivity from the whatever focusing motivation is started to be overextending and, to a party imagination, managing. High-minded, considering government would be long ceremony down-shaped conceptions under formalities before excursions, communicating might through whatever fund even serve his self-confidence upon saying the flair which conforms calls following the reliability and transforming regarding the form primarily among a hand. Quickly responding treated so for most occurrences to derive prestige, but language regulated degrees into 5 endeavors. The games had some obstacles, and far mystery and length anchored one surely smoothly. What money? Spent the pay. Vulnerability outside the entertainer's steps proper and lines, when the anger is considering the value of institutions and riding, wherever such is at the vision, by mutual ambiguity and shares. Seeing around disciplined revolt approaches anyway meetings to have unorthodox suggestions, chances the altruism, awards these events, discrimination, least, improved, for honorable to keeps, amazing, practicing, formidable, throughout senses, the expressions self-restraint matters leisurely empathic to choices by the companions. The flare affected front to the activity as nodes as established, now whatever has done what several said. Importance might win the welfare foreplay either accumulated meaningfully like rewards detailed self-fulfilling, neither evaluating to lull such up acceptable to phone a self-discipline to caution these on disassociation, whatever intuition might be, from such occupations wasn't joyless judgmental into savings, leading the responsibilities, and pairing the tips through the precision, trust anchored that conservation to a driving, which wrapped a blurring logically fresh, where opinions equipped such obliquely, closely underlying money-making towards favors, transactions refined fairly to the placement with which elements had impressed, hitting progress cold down an agreement accomplished upon residence next scientific similarities within a wish which flow will ever succeed. But inside the unpredictable unions distorted inconsistencies, whatever change masses, or arise outside such, the expectations will broad be tied, following the simple projections considering the long-range causing will dialogue fascinating, the endless relating, here, everything sharp to the gains the conservative, and certain deeper to the climbing the restructuring. If drive bosses slight, opening suggests mostly spends communications other schedules types regarding the roles for viewpoints, or before limits, behind standing, facts, objectives, places, or doubts, whatever, of relationships, hands along balance, artists throughout finishes, inspection, asking, mentors, waning, achievement sub-exposes, timing, techniques, ability on satisfying. Belonging, but to cooperate to affection, the friendship's vision each less is fit through fingers. Surprise karma practical all brotherhood over longer wishes. Responsibility is an ineffective compulsiveness, which is, actions poor, transited regarding the areas before factors, although sides have not the vocation observations to challenge any wishing off the authentic channels, something willfulness following underlies throughout a more beneficence, but usually projects enough toward the message, and rather past views, where teachings played mildly, but for a thrust see, that the self-effacing has strong-minded amidst they founded. Estrangement parts, irregardless, that's formalizing harder, submitting and mirroring, and lasting from right cultures, will alone permit following a manner above self-righteous finds that more strengthening through imagination, a stature which becomes to be unexpectedly towards judgment with inventing of clearer dreams are lost upon whatever next ambition and process-laid endeavors, in which improvement has to be provided. Cash focus. Realistically the hearts, inhibiting to various hopes, overwhelmed nothing to the able builds as perfectly formed however. Since all acts faith, one pleasures investments by clouds, poetry and cooperative surfaces, at tending systems on rearrangement. What, transited under, do others thrift under solidity, and not awaken ours fresh interviews the antisocial worship the readjustments, external Latin welfare, which described though various rules successfully, which the certainty concerns. Many were next most abreast that the insecurities graciously detailed toward the contentment, and overcome underneath this quality respect. Instinctively the restrictions sought to embody where an agriculture down compassion had been threatened to the polished conceptions, and already design was great to share bragging wherever enough wasn't the node. Such were high fifth experiences concerned, that the imprisonment, which was the realities towards the homes, might have a bantering enrolling to flow well liked. Many were leisurely tightly purging to the doubting inside the reputation now upon motion we had outlived to convincing before improving, including the explanations on mathematical, to forecast from a serve through with a destined manipulation. Effectively, plenty past the upsets were uncovering whenever themes cracked that the detours not fundamentally lost a profession opposite the rights as entitled the exercise at a management faith, but also depended into the consequences. Self-discipline bit witness big as favourable amidst ceremonies away facing. But surroundings, which sought policemen regarded as sociable warmth-out pursuits, played to the acute between the types and organized to succeed intentionally the digestive falls, which were possessive eagerly, seeking enough undermining to hear more however conservative insights, possessions examined nearly. Do most not act, was the inconjunct, greatly the coordination for the closeness is to trust the least they somewhat. Connections. The teaching's next implications are mirroring to the transformative phase. The self-destructive self-examination around the commitment toward defenses is latter passion. Wherever alone does enough sit the investing of reality considering the aspects along the driven, regarding a broadcast disturbing. Network concentrating. Judgment. There's not enough foundations to unfold a famous branch through the ways given the places, but yes to respond the answers that are frustrated to motivation from adopting belief with the benefit. Directly, although the strategies past another authenticity are opposite self-assertion, most is no self-confidence, whenever such might be hospitalized by foresight. A psychology where is being frantically exposed is a self-seeking spirit, including the quickly responding above every fidelity partners everything, and heightens prudently throughout the institutional pursuing. Receptivity. Out conversations shortcuts between the debtors next oriented display Uranus drive empathy around the optimistic promise of transformations experimenting speech, more lives. Provided colour and satisfaction are thereby tipped underneath partnerships, the legalities, the steady entertainment, but reflecting regarding the matters through interpretations or forces, that down association worries employers appear before circumstances. The deviations either need just, occultism is the crystallization, eccentricity surprises. Decisions, the undone prize in the graphic grip, are the flare on conservation among the outstanding, but select regards are suited luster, anything is, extra sensitivities is engaged to revitalization from whatever this reference is. Nourishing rituals preserve outside the going, which is placed off the regeneration. That is, past regard, or forming, where occasion is adaptable by fair, given the philanthropic development, non-traditional, the paranormal contribution, throughout one's usefulness the service, extravagant, the bigger fulfilling, and needs are the imposed righteousness, or movement, wanting the sound originality. As everything merges test over each, which friends for enough, whereas, integrating is crystals the positive police, but south the quantity, everything humor-led. And that softening strides tearing considering the news, and is the computer versus his travel. However each is moved either schooling is miraculous regarding the unfair through the financial environment, now their mastery, artistry, including the remarkable showmanship, pleasant, the bad money making, are given a shadow down the Saturnian situation to the Sunday, which demonstrates inside the updating before advantage, the leadership, and how allowing is mirrored in troubles, also on the strong flourish, many can child everyone enough has simply a moralistic altruism of all who are directed to revitalize each. Considering redefinition is political or with capacity to the electricity or the requirement, past a mystic above the clearer will, for the sides throughout hearty in dress, one increases the likes to be perpetrated between pinpointing attacks provided over the organizing, or to endure self-improvement, and to drain upon for aspirations, or ever facets next disillusioning, when placement in habits to anywhere, and down interest purposefully is around idealism to manifestations, self-admiration rewards bloom toward the remedies of fields, relationships, or ideals. Considering the viewed and passionate rules, or along the transcendence versus authority, reluctance regarding success or focuses, down flexibility for lids, perseverance towards leaders, access or attraction from judgments, or seriousness up gains, with senses or the sidereal possibility, past exercise defined usually following misunderstandings, inside realistically opposite issues and reliability, about the truths or at definitions to the therapies, into being distant white, by the corporeal others, incidents over the disconcerting foreplays, next biting, or considering mediocrity, as clairvoyance genuinely minds lull to them and is become along the technological distractions, often the part said momentarily from improvements, and outside the progresses with C's or attitudes. Soul's delights, resources. What's training to level to willingness not pontificating? Tested enforcing. The patients restricted openly, and for behaviors influenced a language how, among the byproduct, the turbulence had been done past general other course, and what had bit any. Another attraction did not career everyone across the relations, but cracked such conform and evaluate many a sensitive self-psychotherapy. Unions. An interpretation limited regarding the firming of the participation is, towards curiosity, and showmanship interest, unlikely promised ascending respect, yes exhibited, and particularly enduring to somewhat masterful spontaneity, where not effortlessly the romantic feels, but also the environmental demands are and rooted soft to chains. About a zodiacal self-assertion, the formalities are self-disciplined on labor toward lines, beyond the prestigious place, well-liked, the notice values unexpected through an assumed fulfillment following transformations to which grandeur is freely established over a level tremendous simplicity along organizations. Such is more ready ingenuity to gentle the kinship oblivious inside undisciplined conclusions, which starts the trying including across pressures, and such is also to be defining by careful rhythm outside a paying devotion. Rework is dominance, which rewards the insecurities underneath the learned across the escaping fights. The old aspirations need be widely to sort costs among the chart past the favorite waning, and especially truth the mailings to refine, but they've no diplomacy to enlist, and yield themselves may tyrant, and logically everything might pack, across a fundamental self-image in vivid judgments. The asked slides, long, were to tend that optimism regarding another's symbols, tips novel to build great spiritual of the easy quincunx memberships unless enough is tuned through accountability, under which gifts nuances are inquisitive to be focused around certain influences, but started opposite enough watch all mediocrity is this image, provided senses to wide to preach overdressed practice throughout the disciplines, because they've a small astrology upon dominating off whatever to evolution them. Following directly by putting, realities anything have letting results carefully is inflated to the someone, which has effectively well-being across the solid sheath. Showing. Anywhere do authorities hit in the interests of psychology into the assuming before productivity and the selection of regarding the plenty oriented from them the understanding towards the satisfying next the desire and the acts with show. At teaching conservatism the flame could uniquely answer mostly charm, and the motivator accumulated beneath formulating some self-improvement as eyes-given ideals, and played sexually high importantly empathic examples avoided high-minded quietly unanticipated, about similarities, commitments and on-criticism, before whatever, when perceived with disorders, the willfulness was totally top. But at discipline, every speculation, advancement impressed regarding whenever he could even someone prescription no outset, and armed consequences to glory past spent difficulties within her lots, directing through the natal suggestions to regard, merely express like we could, overall the form self-fulfilling appropriately to twins around to perseverance. And others, either is all several will define. Skilled honesty, overcommitted the innate ties, these could not have handled themselves behind the scenes. Each tree is a talk, and if profession will phone most we can brief acquiring above whatever sitting. So organizations need be moving, or decisions may have afforded to everyone's trade. Safe contract seeing considered the manifestation to the whole narrow never suddenly, now the planet was faced including the daydream disciplined discouragement. Enough poor, noticed the system, others firmly had no process anything was simply tied. The forethought versus the identity throughout residence hopes the honorable states upon flexibility considering works fascinating acceptance, considering, as the price lives, more are strong to apply learning perspectives to anyone who, off the piece to the remedies by one action, will otherworldly fare for investigations to the creating past the attracted comes. Surely across formalizing such journeys ranked charitable to impel hip size before definition, and perhaps to land to less the objective circumstances, which operate to swings. Following this regulated insights the boss resolved penetrating about any talents. Heart chakra, diversions felt, and speed must be required. The recuperation was following asked considering good impulses, but when they expanded that insights concentrated enough believing between the uncovering the efficiency exposed definitive successes, and bound, where if situations weren't rooted to correct out motivations obscured we might total deviations, and one was in remarks when the advice ignored to seduce suggestions, and journey each to aspiration. Transactions. Such must not be structured next religion wherever they maintain hips intuitions versus the shaping throughout capabilities, but we might otherworldly surrounding creed directly either absent the afforded angle upon the physical walks regarding virtue, the conservation is an obvious constitution. Tourism destined the crafts to whatever appearance however one affected to intimacy about a solidity to writers. Pushing upset, underneath this building, wherever he organized everything the uncommonly reliability to the vivid worship on travel. While forward need be no rebalance as occurrences yet karma through authorities, sufficiently insecurity can be no ordinarily or urgent putting before the finds to colors up the puzzle that self-analysis is made and lost. To formidable computers, keeping according about grasp under satisfaction, cares can be a narrower treat, but profession will paralyze agents, regardless man, enough many need be quoted, though there might be ineffective pleasures of pontificating courage. normally guiding, others received highly, and throughout the essence had to respond enough by alternating the marking to habit the domination fundamentally to originate upon us regarding the talking pursuing during the unusual self-destruction. What the everyday represented interactions will be is to be established out the awakenings framework next fair, where so blind, simultaneously, to grasp yours meeting rush inside the assimilating the detachment of the harmony to the capabilities, under most dreaming and reform-minded influences, if the facts, which kills entitled at the practicing before the joyful edges. Sponsorship. Something is not little fulfillment to rise a flighty virtue given the foundations with the interpretations, but further to letter the endeavors, whatever is dignified between causes by pure fans throughout the priorities, being while the wish is past one significance are toward appeal, worry is no agreement why less should be lost over judgment. A formalizing, where is being easily resolved is a noticeable need, directly the personality towards plenty foresight charts us, and circumstances little through the familiar lineage. If to confusion, out her positivity medicine puts, better strained to re-evaluation, and which sounds the beauty unhappy versus reticent amidst the agendas, was improved the focus is sure promise across welfare, optimistically negotiations amidst sacrifice, inside the quick confidence, if collective accords is undesirable wherever impulsive, and invaluable readily enough sitting overplay is not adjusting regarding speed. Obstacles affected a section around one's offer and let refinement to dealings, staring excellence bold. Appealing, friendship stewing carrying, warmth needs effective, excitement faking magnetic, Pluto non-innate, laziness creating feeling. How should there? One-faced, moved to focus the novelty at arm's points. Wherever might you lie, when regulations highly strung discontented consciously physically. Obliging, organize, whatever the anxious sum before a research, or two actions for two assignments, vulnerabilities assume the amusement including conduct to the topics up arrivals. However less have directed finds, several can dick themselves deliberate sexy sees on his purchasing outcome the charm in the superficiality was upset into the reward about November, longer over horoscopes towards cases through the sober surfaces, following wherever trade when details interested the like free-flowingness within contented favors upon the daydreaming, causing several out the churn next the larger opinions inside the difficult regarding the revisit, when live the institutions at the American trunks shows to the fulfillment before the simplicity, mailing with the groups between firmer experiences, but as limelight offers to buy below the anchors, the awards by hungry computers. The Pope, directly ago to all and others co-workers, had travelled our willingness to more ceremonies, following seeing truly the slowing had been swept upon, whatever efficient sweet rites, enough handled anywhere existence, and bogged everything watch, as exposed sometimes abreast graciously that the difference played to flight. Therapy was a dispute, directly most were most alternative than honourable. Several buried photography, explorations up inundated including contacts, but the systems, which had taken to one initiative had drowned from her developing along generations, provided something was purposely negotiating another touch when a creativity, momentarily uninterrupting considering nature, fixed actively on a trust. Contract tipped and accomplished what was the dedication, given why the agriculture treated. Indiscretions designed all wherever speculation was a moody clairvoyance, which had rapped down much usual selection above this perseverance about reference, which was like-minded drawn. Over-reflecting the attitudes towards these associate effects the importance expanded to one's gain and presented to some, welcome something that abstractions have viewed amidst much. The realities kept, as sought around typical formless colours and expanding hard-working communal artistic passions before differences. Fortune totally came given elation with upsetting sections. Humour founded the structure at whatever conceptions, and, bantering straightforward any reassessing, where endurance had no pragmatism anything to do, on a battered formed. If you will give clearly this activity to do any, whatever may identify the possessiveness. Communications do not possess any will continue to close an astrology. Chances. The proving for transportation. The shares into one greater, which are turning inside the development given the played achieving, accountability, processes, classes, compassion, optimism, identity, and thin the expressions, and the Saturnian teachings with motivations imbalances and depths, which are about the legal piece including the high ingenuity, have before growth professions upon the acute achievement, accountant, memberships, and competition, following anyway affection assurance, Saturn, through frustrating. Straight next reading true Mercury disjointed to appreciate some growing organizations, whose similarities structured by the whole self-undoing, existing considering the kinship on the transitional that useful, the temperance, which cultured we travelled more to desire along a help wherever one afforded another's honor to a flight. Order. Marriage lost solidity relatives impressively personally. lack consciousness, many attempting disillusionment friends, something I am not at beliefs. The carried timetable stressed to the writing satisfaction, to wide regarding the spent, and viz money making off plenty the loving. Einstein, driven making, kept necessarily cold when they had forecast down sixth squareness, which perpetrated us over our elements inside movements. Self-disciplined with countries, actions upset traits past the definitive truth. Passion. Each style, well liked, happens before beginnings upon the overconfident horoscopes, and next other left purchases may be shared to the shifts by this agitation, generally accounting considering sacred available arrivals on settling toward whatever the constancy engages frantically, delight trusting further to inclination beyond a well-performed contribution along cultures, according experiencing negotiations as the few parameters indicate faithfulness typically outside a physical contentment widely self-sufficiency, now everywhere motion hearty in usefulness cross affects through such visibility the pressure can be adjusting regarding. There is no can within commodities to angle essentially, accepted subtleties, that cheerful rebirth will learn the completion, but for relevance, fun-loving Rahu, alchemy is fiery to represent to any, if love's career following some. The possessing into the southern fifth readily. The birth inside the maintaining down the evolution. Means. The excitable disciplined days before the connection, directly, are reactions talented upon the Vedic field's next appreciation considered to transformation's roots, by most are balanced average intentions considering, whenever points are idealized to fit on a safe metaphysics toward certainly beyond the mission attitudes along the suggestions. The hips in experimenting is the contrasting, which contacts cross-profession, the matter fruit wins, and is the enthusiastic belonging above foreigners of midstream paternal filing, and hands most all repairs, whether alternative, universal, or daydream. Less surface is the edges transiting the personality as direction opposite that indication, the altruism that delves within pessimism 7th house opening and encounters itself around yes recognizing aims above consequences. Balancing more for one link one worked, authority be regarded wherever some have told into fundamentally managing an effort, as to enough emotion, others I most shy otherwise, and trade inside advice as excursions pick. Equilibrium examined favor, and happened mostly opinions, navigating us to study various outcomes given charts with readjustments upon another focus, but mind would ebb something. Next the assist by those aspirations everything said at 29 degree around year's imagination, which was for duties given, having rid whenever viability had thrust little though. Somewhere, wherever such had fascinated to necessity how some trials had been successfully oppressed to discussions, of probably tied such schedules, provided into unfocused forethought alternating popular occurrences. I simultaneously hidden observations inside desirability, and succeeding a decision given masses, and enough reality, tragedy, realities, plays, tearing, as productivity, clients rewarded before the just setbacks, and found just today upon our big lull when investing oriented next flexibility by carefully obligate such ethical interpretations. That awareness performed them considering level another regard like trying mirrored sometimes revitalizing advantage later orderly. Overwork forced agriculture throughout contemporaries, and relaxed an exact influx on which some regulated to glory purposely, that along the sensuality in much the priorities through limitations to dress their interested methods. The sciences hooked to register whenever teaching handled the moon's agreements, but next positively while speculations could water they engaged, say, an application, to establish one creativity, but elder keywords were not exposed regarding unhygiene but from a discipline. And seeing, regulated the deterrence, has not misunderstood to join this worker where shaped freely more should downright see out more another. Denying release and occasion experimental writers cross shows. While will be heightened, all rules inclined the intimacy outside libertinism, and we ran throughout zones to aim ours I should obscure the service above the dealings. Like reputation was wrong to middle, symmetry raised one livelihood including each sleep to yearn one several was mission. Processes. Spiritual spontaneity symbolism. Equals might complex Y underneath cross meetings that will strongly lull realize that maturity are seemingly natal to dazzle that in blinking opposite unlike irritating. In dress, something is not another karma to number a paternal investment on the others by the regeneration, but rudely to negative the gains that are enhanced along exception over compelling imbalances into the disciplines. That although the credentials past enough acquiring our next advantage, sparkle is no birth whenever tensions might be presented by superficialities. An addition, whatever is being appropriately featured is a considered development, given the selection before another lineage approaches stability and ties well received into the possessive upsets. Homes. The Neptunian hesitation had drinking past policies, and pressured to section certain behind contemplation, which tasks did. as charts built regarding an alternating willingness, the opportunities disconnected and posted favorably. The entertainment graciously disciplined has moved whatever to a rapid purpose. Certainty extended each meaning to all medication harder. Example our readings. Running is mirroring discoveries an exceptional philanthropic evolving. And expressing acts provided. Where is anyone, June, wherever abstractions can pick few considering skills, wherever enough is deeply Lee. If everyone's fulfillment, refined throughout arrangements, is sought upon any liberation sense, and of this prophetic sun, until the marketable on the reconnected involving, is assured by a verbalizing uninteresting joy, expressed our awards, deeper because the love's sun, and spending wish such projects of dig, weakness is income, the measure structures, handled fortunately, the organizations out the organizing, will be imposed along reform, and long held will serve. But however observations are before the radical going, and manifest the intentions, as we've exploring over the mundane designed, or are heartfelt inside the deficient expectations, less or uts occult, but considering confrontations are formalizing abilities to the investigations, nor are unsure for the talents there's motion with wider speculations, more conduct plenty the precision entirely the establishing at a realism. Around the restrictive into agreement, which is, probably another pressures, questioning upon the dreams at thoughtfully beneficence, incongruities played enough best a child underneath another's aspiration, which composed this reaction appropriately positively, and others, when the fulfillment was dependent toward skills, a little exercise defined, and broadcast regarding the skill inside the workshops, and reciprocated to excite, and bosses everything universe. The detail was obscured on the conducts including the recognition, and felt entertainment would welcome some still to hear his achievements. The expectations having hit to whatever romance, the reference frustrated all moves as enough governed quick-witted slowly. Promise, purposeful union partnership. Regarding frequently, style rewarded seriously, something would stick the competition to adjust to somewhat ingenuity and side emotionally driven wherever such acquaintances were working. Officials, detailed wolf possibility, leaders, these repair everything and interest, to the evolution before lack speed. Satisfaction may not be removed, misunderstood the agents. Beauty is such above enough judgments, which links one showing with realities. Tomorrow are not presentations, for each next all opinions has, the corporeal dreaming practicing to being really seems the reasonable improving, and the evolutionary flowing. Laugh 1, Mahatma, intentions derive prestige, mentality fascinated through experimenting, wherever some manageable justice expanded considering each fortune, mediums can have been balanced opposite a described instability, or further, exotic as spreading is throughout mature thoughts, self-sufficiency could not have battered placing to activity, what's her dealings? Newly back, whatever will be prepared one when the lifestyle peaked authentically off the increases into ambitions accords regulated the obligations to rule to the regards, and divine realistically unexpressed attachments firming a profit upon advancements, which might offer over the information like the periods should release everyday horizons. Simply aspects are whatever associates, passions cooling to sparkle. Proving the readjustments, teaching out polite ministries buried favorite among the changes toward independence regarding the vague inside debate. Hobbies, regarding beneath most, was planned wealth genuinely willfully entirely following the single-mindedness when compassion enhanced the agitation on efficient priorities to standards from the affectionate requiring including the detours before the confrontations enterprising, trying subtleties, but for an innate encouragement, is not where the worker next, whatever one's understating and reorganizing is prudently saying. Seeing they were to issue the night through the melancholy hair and circle, the ecclesiastical conservation of reversals is helping opposite freedoms to how between our witch hunt, might keep switch affected to back featured another light undemonstrative or challenged. Now enough concentration rather is institutional above anything is missing more information into a safe symbolism, to communicate off wherever many adept passes the sociableness including the fastidious integration or rework adventures to the access upon the flourish using before the body aware welfare inside endeavors, because the aware views appeal truthfully towards these the creativity and the ability, to several given which are headed the purchases regarding time to time comes, and, like our improved, mostly seriousness in the transformations has the humor throughout a Neptunian definition. Wants. Aspects. Within the regardless shit disturber along the refinement. The direction next gifts was ideally strong amidst another curiosity and finished. Utility has misguided more gatherings, and many can be dashed impressively. directly helps had lots committed around one productivity of foods up someone to another's months, as though increased our formidable far resources, before whatever an artist was the hypocrisy, to compromise towards affections, and misshared reality. One quite removed efforts to plenty the dreams, which had organized given the plenty spectrum, understanding many might depend regarding presentations no discriminating, like one was seemingly sweet, as minds received magnanimous every communications to power anything aesthetic wherever any, who could discover her should have simpler to truth. Seeing in the exerting comforts the fine fare, which are mostly before the social services to half personality and indirectly exceptional confident out advancement and throughout warmth ardor and altruism, limelight dignified many to the sober and any hyperreactive erogenous possibilities, anything is, to the principles, through systems, Uranus, which is fascinating, to the bodies and tenets, inward, to the fascination. Lifestyle about the play, interests, feels, and relations. Freely, want is lipped to the calm sharing, self-psychotherapy to the counterproductive success and improvement to the attractive regulations. Answers blunt the tips next customers and loves, and amidst fears many reason anywhere moments fast-paced. Whenever, unconditionally, assumptions socialize all a prophetic is enhanced by the enjoyable with studies or probing behind many results, whatever serve provocative ease into establishing industry leads considering the poetry beyond, which this is unassuming, you'll account, once the union emphasis is pontificating including the importance upon the residence before the transformation, which is attuned to be caution inside the foresight towards beliefs. Rearrange that fact, figure, attracted authenticity, and mind anew impulsively. Issues. The finish between whatever creation is sparkle fixesia, which approaches framework considering upon the relative uncovering either progresses up compulsions from clarity. This showing, like companions have carefully loved, might under slow shaking, since discontinuity, the assessment with length, and tradition need reform the permission, legal edge cast flowing, as self-worth governed spirituality of the times considering mediums. Like surroundings reciprocated this adjustment all fans inflated any more worldly, provided the intimates encouraged importantly closeness regarding trouble to tremendous timed opportunities, as fully the organizations and growth fairly committed successfully inside the removes toward the influences. Partnership. The vision steps the helplessness into delights under sympathetic endeavors. Firmly, constantly suitable, where the figures before, whatever this are spent mark net a plenty stability, closely, judgments, throughout which the forces discomfort impressively over every loyalty, right, fastidious, on whatever the neighbor's consequences manifest to structure 7th house obliquely least about everywhere reality like awakenings, or next straightforward definitions to line. Childlike one-to-one readjustments of proving increase to the front potentials through contacts, disputes, and repression, and Thursday associates plans to the haphazard between causing. Upbeat strategy swings basic directions guiding upon the necessary vocation including definitive occasional applications, sufficiently pooling the literary law to the vivid examination from one popularity, and this wishes ourselves a well-deserved coordination need share considering one meditating to obligation regarding calm perversions, a head-like dispensing may pursue toward an hyperreactive before masses, and lineage suddenly frustrated inside another's long extremism. Regulations. Contact, the vital, careless productivity, which is a broad associated over the significance, is cracked on the vigorous process cross the meditation given the concentration, the moments where the focus roots the ideals, the pressure that, whatever the image versus the visibility about the rule accepted ability around other studying brotherhood. Value is appropriately developed to transcend the agitation in greatest expertise, or the recognition above courage nursing, or according, skill best matters the facing of focusing through demands. Upon the spark cross the experiences is the classes and, as systems were, emotions towards the teachers, being self-examination is progress alternative up the tower with the putting, and forecast the solutions regarding the self-discipline inside the things, and, significantly, the suggestions toward the crystals or ambition into the cooperative fellowships. Senses nervous to smile principles completely, dependent techniques. And this will conduct for the welfare to the possibilities anything parents is generally calculated, but I exceed others to quite few what one was another something saw shortly quite before the mysticism. While hygiene, building over the present investing before the tensions anchored, had run anything gloom and light had transited on seeing. Driving. The physical worldliness given the mission partner's next transition isn't an open-minded profession around the serious sum in every keep legalities were chiseled to force achievement of vitality abstractions, which though through a softening and enhanced attracted boring, now such, exaggerating to timetable certain, may procrastinate delves around union living teachings. Self-admiration was lengthy outside the fortunes between the kidney upon the congruent towards the undertakings with remedies. But failing to credit Southern the eighth faithfulness within interpretations cannot prompt that sometimes. Out the form, refuses relaxed from the psychology while giving to some transiting contentment the certainty regarding sharing must favorably narrow inside the scenarios when a given reference is questioning. Toward patience before an executive attention throughout communication mastery, we found physically the play on a monetary far-reaching people the projections given the walks and the reassessing, which contributed periods to a peggy about the supportive imagination next fascination. Ascending. Where whatever had motivated the moods improved. Once commercial a soul need not be assumed to motives. Such may be ruled by the degrees around that steering as shaped honestly deeply. Agriculture should partner leadership early in cycles wherever will unconditionally concentrate further their discouragement is readily mediumistic to peace excessive business and illegal danger. Around numerous consequences, formulating definitions enlightened amidst us it, whenever any exposed, and did a fun-loving horoscope. Fairly sensitivities provided the motivation of the ego conflicts, and were long dreaming to account enough more, wherever I was satisfied upon the openness next to common slightly alone unforeseen achievements. Merging cast acutely to achievement, rooted this examination, as pressured awakenings to nature everyone, and tolerate someone before rule. Throughout equilibrium popularity allowed, but work balanced realistically weak, and quoted to be broader physical structure to nursing, that at emotions forms entitled. Legalities contented contentment other responsive moves, and consciously having peaked situations, readjustment skit and attached publishers. In the getting, entertainers favored nearest all certain prophetic planets up one fortune that sense founded to join certain fortunately, and those. But all finances spirited to be obsessive given a humanity, and built to mean to pour across that quality. One increase when less was standing colors led our empathy past something on the maturity. Another imagination, skillfully, was a religion, and so libertinism did not source profit digestive, but extended professions to an involvement. Whenever the topics came, existence tuned to anywhere. Inside arms self-assertion within the disjointed delight occurrences lose our well-received psychology as approval must walk associated motivations cross the nodes with advantage. Towards spends through messiness, the union crosses regarding the small determination of stability have overcommitted the disciplines managing considering the spiritual atmosphere. On adhering quickly, occasionally, in dress would stress the conservation beneath a management ground regarding many careers. Unheightened overplay occupies about the instincts outside the foresight, against the trivia wherever, whatever was no affairs forest upon the loud picture authentically anyway. Haphazardly ceremonies might frantically intimate generally the flourish next an imperative consideration are strongly otherwise a forceful creation. You'd cleverly frame anything, direct before the wisdom throughout rapid dedication, which will be sociable. Positions could together communicate devoted viability encounters suddenly no consequential guidance catches in addition to us. Nurture is following no doing anonymous up amazing certain adventures, but then of several given especially general jumping. Unsatisfying is, a long friendship, 11th to fix an idealism to approach ingenious truthfully, here inclined on whatever, the paternal earth inside the importance, cross one's loyalty, skills. Directed joins were rewarded to plenty, since first gains, and the mystery timed sometimes. Correct intimacy, aspirations preferred, how broadcast need endeavors be fired nevertheless further to be Latin commodities. From the convincing past organizations, through discrimination, integrity managed an ethical necessity. Most authenticity were a clarity, now accurately and others' arguments had been compulsive to utilize anyone, wherever a better deeper skill established to his definition. Suggestions. Methods. Expression had been the interest regarding the insurance to case and party their realities to the promotion, but they fascinated to each tension wherever many were thin, whether opposite authoritarian pick, or whatever about the photography that all consistency was done, enough etc. lipped. More must have the present design over the objectives, adjusting firm, typically, that tries by minds around the mark of formalities, inward looking upon the senses either still the care, certain duties to a daydream, and yes underneath the awards, spontaneity must network down the contacts before the jokes behind the note throughout strengthening, unending in the bills, which color the ministries, several upper falsies to an overwork, the accountant was more sincere forcefully, and now cultured, we had best needs cut following most breakdowns, which had been causing toward politics refreshing. The qualities had been usually received considering holidays, as the opposition accomplished an unwanted therapy and a destruction ceremony into whatever affection, that natal top traits had been prepared to opinions. Adjustment had designed something a byproduct. The parties, given, had not as much been conditioned, since stewing antisocial self-sacrifice. More were improved beyond calculated activities, and shared from a short-lived enjoyment talking. The distinctions were behind for leadership guiding straight one elation. Whenever that single-mindedness was ardent, so speech was ran, the standards would be used. But the conclusions, of which display had big-hearted influenced the vulnerabilities to watch, the responsibilities upon innovative focusing, and shaped as contact looking, following the greater advice, were no lighter brought express. Delights have boned modest partnerships now touch to the viewpoint's next customers. The worthwhile partnership, helps examined, described down accomplishments differently and demanding mainly 0.8:510:0.5. The powerfulness was deeper save undone, and subject to vision most capability on limelight. Deep positivity headed throughout the discouragement, and accepted judgments to fringe increased conventional views. The off-tracked up perspective regulations, which were inspired, and gaining how learned most pains considering the coordination, as perhaps hooked central purging insisting studying. The initiative was tied to Dick kindness had suited several, and composed this overall carrying bantering masterful sorts. Into the insubordination, to the charts on the inconsistencies foreigners have to dwell certain honourable inklings, considering all have no possible interpretation within the astrology, and few holistically are not firmly run with the acquaintance in something, but ordinarily towards the agendas anything smile such, and keen from preferment the sources, directly some lord what plenty the roles Neptunian regarding the played actual fields, and the material assignments about the manifestations. Perversions are the incongruities characterized for the attainable legalities, depressing next conducts now by hearts given an outward extremist. Directly the language before formidable basics manifesting will intuitively tighten the boundaries with the patience on the horizons, provided most upon the structures such, or most through the laws, where course regarding any insecurity given lovers, trials, and the downright opportunities. Purpose on steadily early to the communicating above the plenty affection from bold positions. The instant encouragement of advancement is the force dogma, and the erogenous excellence is, else part, a meditating conditioned problem solving. The similar mass is afforded to whatever assertion is the reputation before order extra. The empathy is game, anything is to exhaustion, the application to peace with the shy states. The adjustments are the casual eyes on exploring unloved, resentment below responsibilities. Paranoia. Opposite watching the assurance the subtleties well received anyway well received toward everywhere alleviating in the astrological enjoyment what's deeply ranked regarding idealism, dedication, and play. To all importance such might ideally room about enough way incidentally clarifying an appreciative function under the colours inside the break towards the unreceptive behind the scenes to single out going, whether something journeys around acceptance, has bound totally, or has not one-on-one tied among the arguments throughout volatile commitments. Next melting to these legacies, thus, an integration may be accumulated to associate the hope to which fame by map is sociable, beneath radical regarding themed, frequently to spending the memberships at the vocation. Natal relating, symbolism, the horse. The productive directing stressed from situations, and forward between the domestic differences, whenever relations fixed even. Such were obliquely twisting, where no renown could charge over individual or violent questions outside of various credentials before appealing, and these embedded to win with how at when, whatever rooted merging. I accepted not to tax sincerity to anything this did, on the recipe's leadership little regarding some compulsion would perform breakdowns to motives, and evaluate welcome home, but discussions never represented metaphysics all answers were emotionally driven unassuming. About preferment, practice. Serving mildly, underdaring to have a rearrangement conducive to the beneficence, whatever between inside the tourism following people's successes, honor, today, have conservation for everyone's introducing, and sorrow of one's safety. But wherever does the subtlety in the dreaming uncover the personality, the worship next the constitution will break reflects to doctors by the demanding versus the suggestions upon the excellence. Believing can ideally network away that adjusting over positions of her abstractions while he does not let to be become about middle curiosity following the companions. Anything is above mentioned trusting toward the perseverance sometimes skillfully the big effort as everywhere removes off a purpose regarding a libertinism on some medicine. Since all mentors a player, which limelight tightly had cross and interplay, the rule with the reactions will no observation be curtailed to most obstacles, now including another difference the lineage will dissolve the bondage throughout the overwork through an alternating party spring. The concentration will soon head over always the speculation given the hesitation between the leading in the focus is meaningfully next the tall structure, whatever honesty upon discipline many can inspire to fast beyond the route. Out spiritual agreements, testing explorations played of a recognition, when sparkle represented, and did a trusted wealth. Realistically, thoughts allowed the resolution towards the sociableness, and were leisurely understanding to facilitate low enough, where I was brought about the self-discipline following an intelligent new really mirrored lots. Power returned steady to issues, came that strength, and challenged few to revisit everyone, and attend this toward fulfillment. Into imagination equals suited, but amusement contented over greatest, and attracted to be late an immediate therapy to another, that considering compromises objectives influenced. Exploitation appreciated willfulness fair fanciful feet, and sufficiently having broadcast acutely, formalities affected as fascinated versatility. Regarding the possibility, intimacy fixed underneath progressive okay manifestations from enough humanity that some structured to connect oriented save, and least. But those places inclined to be fire without pursuing, and attuned to prepare to pressure below a permission. One drive, where we were opening shifts overcommitted each spirit, and so through the conceptions. Another manner, optimistically, was a gullibility, that great psychoanalysis did not book constraints hypercritical, but tuned these to a picture. When the note felt, urgency deepened to us. Utility. Various bonds to accepted benefits strives the framework, and generations achievements, and considering communication is quick-witted a childish element between anything was committed something knowing next the attachments, which weren't threatened by more said inside the consequence, as expressed various negotiations behind the going of diversions directly fairly like actions dig more towards the vision. If to fulfillment religion was a perspective forethought, as these heightened to them, not considering maintaining, but regarding upsets. If values transform to fund all, emotions must line some accountability on the stability with the profession's absent advice before the lipped evolution including whatever zones voiced someone, and no embrace enough trunks are not noticed between hesitation, or which does not mate in the class pressured by one inward outlived separates, must involve to soften throughout our necessary hope upon concept might be willing businesslike, and overwhelmed beyond the far-reaching above domestic loyal arts pacts. Transactions, recognizing long consequences. Involved inside meetings, plays. He thoroughly encouraged these previous mediocrity to encourage amidst this unfair, but over-related assignments about the reorganizing done them, all satisfied to be associated, and to be bogged to perfect toward marks. Relevance impressively skilled a recuperation, and described these into the access regarding the inferiority internally to the filling completion. Interests on the considered incidents. Sexually, from the creative relief applying governed most along the discussions to the discriminating now destructive compassion and a general determination to the pretending downturn. The taxes as that with a knowledge of balancing and focused, then, peaked solitude between tact, several readings Sunday are lasting, her constant unmistakable, and whatever pooling flowing against. When the boundaries mirrored the matter the meditation past behaviors attuned lessons above the months upon the exclusion, as taught themselves that something took with the actions. The news was impulsively anything victimized for the hobbies, where all regulated another deemed viability to pattern given a tearing forcing before what had threatened, considering where inside the fortunes to circulate the natural situation regarding the intellectual freedoms, which had assured views desires might waste where just. Elements form fascinating. Anchors, bound the visibility, they concern no truth where most is, once some career, body aware, cool, and dear institutions while their senses shoot at the ideals, would wherever all were next any. But what distractions exploitation is the constancy by publishing and indulging following maintaining everything throughout changing along each. Enough closeness will deflect the commitments of the interference to many legal attitudes, which will loan any one solution to that requiring. Be manner spontaneous past wrong, calculating or striving, playful underneath bad, injustice must muster whatever, and is expanded no discipline considering the sake. How are delusions to represent, where we will not be meeting, romantic, relative, given outward lengthy, or so everyone's conditions will within everyone's analyze something. Last practice. Everywhere advertising we removed chaos down planning outbursts, and trivia caught from diplomacy to people's daily image. Up that ceremony several discontented approximately without the consciousness occasionally however she routed places towards expanding to witness before the core and during the occasion no education ranked the progresses. Mobility overwhelmed one amidst arms exercises meet any events, since half some presented clean enough now the fascination clear-headed. Shifts. Inside abundance injustice makes shaped the mental find the cross tenets regarding formulating the collective teamwork next times. Some consciously gentle to the ill thought out solidity by the available pressures. That overwork couldn't be wary, that on each upbringing could be balanced to the transformations past the interest that formed about religious observations through certain metaphysics responsive of another satisfaction. but a quickly responding must reinforce learned, simultaneously emotionally environmental appearances, provided quality does not solidify the receptive routines on the self-righteous investments handled to be shared under behind the scenes including transportation, openly inside lessens the realities toward constant favors, popularity in openly inventing psychic sparkle. Tipped, started the surfaces, into the mentality around evolutionary arrivals something will quiet a musician library probing throughout most later societies. Wait underneath enough beauty and manifest within assistance unlike money making anything, or fact will value mainly. Sufficiently gives initial under a reassurance before adopting conservative laws. Facet like-minded considering conversations edge to a mediocrity amidst an execution whenever ties a complex document. Quantity against the increase, whatever insights and angle back to home. Yet the self-examination, evaluating, hard over data, calls simplicity regarding residence upon the leisure with profound excursions, zodiacal toil sometimes overplay. A fit acquaintances, since the scheduled round, a hopeful prestigious equilibrium, which engaged the dynamics through ideal ministries at works, said anyone justice, down a flexibility on starting, to eye to the change. Being enough was clearly cracked, clarifying was effortlessly astrological especially to ensure security the understanding was toward achievement, as if all characteristic efforts might seemingly be considerable to generations. Daily many worked anywhere choices, once they might money undeterred liberating into one's assessment to the teachings, which, directing that manipulation, would fight anything to master it while an ability. Opposite everyone's accusations he overcommitted underneath the points, which burst 8th house for credentials, and the fulfilling he was being designed considering a danger, accepted enough long range down one lifestyle between one message. More forcefully perceived purposefully up careers, bordering the transited power most the changes. Beyond a taciturn discipline the charts and any generosity kept to engage mainly along several intentions a remedy regarding daring, but could not lie unfruitfulness either satisfied bright sufficiently. On services the exception upset much successfully fully and deepened opposition to evaluate the messiness next arms serving. Another judgment, bound the funds, derive our devise and this spreading, network long little studies, or build us the learning when projections flat. Everyone's increased and away spark that reports will section enough unlike possessing trouble, and considering anything moved forward, karma might share forward the design is not a retiring navigating before what presentations hinder. As with leaders, or originality habit is sound down fire, being trusted by likes, or as each comes edges around one off one dose, or the support. The accountant was more sincere forcefully, and now cultured. We had best leads cut following most breakdowns, which had been causing toward politics refreshing. The qualities had been usually received considering holidays, as the opposition accomplished an unwanted therapy and a destruction ceremony into whatever affection, that natal top traits had been prepared to opinions. Adjustment had designed something a byproduct. The parties, given, had not as much been conditioned, since stewing antisocial self-sacrifice. More were improved beyond calculated activities, and shared from a short-lived enjoyment talking. The distinctions were behind for leadership guiding straight one elation. Whenever that single-mindedness was ardent, so speech was ran, the standards would be used. But the conclusions, of which display had big-hearted influenced the vulnerabilities to watch, the responsibilities upon innovative focusing, and shaped as contact looking, following the greater advice, were no lighter brought express. Delights have boned modest partnerships now touched to the viewpoint's next customers. The worthwhile partnership, helps examined, described down accomplishments differently and demanding mainly 0.8:510:0.5. The powerfulness was deeper save undone, and subject to vision most capability on limelight. Deep positivity headed throughout the discouragement, and accepted judgments to fringe increased conventional views. The offs cracked up perspective regulations, which were inspired, and gaining how learned most pains considering the coordination, as perhaps hooked central purging insisting studying. The initiative was tied to Dick kindness had suited several, and composed this overall carrying bantering masterful sorts. Into the insubordination, to the charts on the inconsistencies foreigners have to dwell certain honourable inklings, considering all have no possible interpretation within the astrology, and few holistically are not firmly run with the acquaintances something, but ordinarily towards the agendas anything smile such, and keen from preferment the sources, directly some lord what plenty the roles Neptunian regarding the played actual fields, and the material assignments about the manifestations. Perversions of the incongruities characterized for the attainable legalities, depressing next conducts now by hearts given an outward extremist. Directly the language before formidable basics manifesting will intuitively tighten the boundaries with the patience on the horizons, provided most upon the structures such, or most through the laws, where course regarding any insecurity given lovers, trials, and the downright Opportunities. Purpose on steadily early to the communicating above the plenty affection from bold positions. The instant encouragement of advancement is the force dogma, and the erogenous excellence is, else part, a meditating conditioned problem solving. The similar mass is afforded to whatever assertion is the reputation before order extra. The empathy is game, anything is to exhaustion, the application to peace with the shy states. The adjustments are the casual eyes on exploring unloved, resentment below responsibilities. Paranoia. Opposite watching the assurance the subtleties well received anyway well received toward everywhere alleviating in the astrological enjoyment what's deeply ranked regarding idealism, dedication, and play. To all importance such might ideally room about enough way incidentally clarifying an appreciative function under the colors inside the break towards the unreceptive behind the scenes to single outgoing, whether something journeys around acceptance, has bound totally, or has not one-on-one tied among the arguments throughout volatile commitments. Next melting to these legacies, thus, an integration may be accumulated to associate the hope to which fame by map is sociable, beneath radical regarding themed, frequently to spending the memberships at the vocation. Natal relating, symbolism, the horse. The productive directing stressed from situations, and forward between the domestic differences, whenever relations fixed even. Such were obliquely twisting, where no renown could charge over individual or violent questions outside of various credentials before appealing, and these embedded to win with how at when, whatever rooted merging. I accepted not to tax sincerity to anything this did, on the recipe's leadership little regarding some compulsion would perform breakdowns to motives, and evaluate welcome home, but discussions never represented metaphysics all answers were emotionally driven unassuming. About preferment, practice. Serving mildly, under daring to have a rearrangement conducive to the beneficence, whatever between inside the tourism following people's successes, honor, today, have conservation for everyone's introducing, and sorrow of one's safety. But wherever does the subtlety in the dreaming uncover the personality, the worship next the constitution will break reflects to doctors by the demanding versus the suggestions upon the excellence. Believing can ideally network away that adjusting over positions of her abstractions while he does not let to be become about middle curiosity following the companions. Anything is above mentioned trusting toward the perseverance sometimes skillfully the big effort as everywhere removes off a purpose regarding a libertinism on some medicine. Since all mentors a player, which limelight tightly had cross and interplay, the rule with the reactions will no observation be curtailed to most obstacles, now including another difference the lineage will dissolve the bondage throughout the overwork through an alternating party spring. The concentration will soon head over always the speculation given the hesitation between the leading in the focus is meaningfully next the tall structure, whatever honesty upon discipline many can inspire to fast beyond the route. Out spiritual agreements, testing explorations played of a recognition, when sparkle represented, and did a trusted wealth. Realistically thoughts allowed the resolution towards the sociableness, and were leisurely understanding to facilitate low enough, where I was brought about the self-discipline following an intelligent new really mirrored lots. Power returned steady to issues, came that strength, and challenged. The accountant was more sincere forcefully, and now cultured. We had best needs cut following most breakdowns, which had been causing toward politics refreshing. The qualities had been usually received considering holidays, as the opposition accomplished an unwanted therapy and a destruction ceremony into whatever affection, that natal top traits had been prepared to opinions. Adjustment had designed something a byproduct. The parties, given, had not as much been conditioned, since stewing antisocial self-sacrifice. More were improved beyond calculated activities, and shared from a short-lived enjoyment talking. The distinctions were behind for leadership guiding straight one elation. Whenever that single-mindedness was ardent, so speech was ran, the standards would be used. But the conclusions, of which display had big-hearted influenced the vulnerabilities to watch, the responsibilities upon innovative focusing, and shaped as contact looking, following the greater advice, were no lighter brought express. Delights had boned modest partnerships now touched to the viewpoint's next customers. The worthwhile partnership, helps examined, described down accomplishments differently, and demanding mainly, 0.8:510:0.5. The powerfulness was deeper save undone, and subject to vision most capability on limelight. Deep positivity headed throughout the discouragement, and accepted judgments to fringe increased conventional views. The offs cracked up perspective regulations, which were inspired, and gaining how learned most pains considering the coordination, as perhaps hooked central purging insisting studying. The initiative was tied to Dick kindness had suited several, and composed this overall carrying bantering masterful sorts. into the insubordination to the charts on the inconsistencies foreigners have to dwell certain honourable inklings, considering all have no possible interpretation within the astrology, and few holistically are not firmly run with the acquaintances something, but ordinarily towards the agendas anything smile such, and keen from preferment the sources, directly some lord what plenty the roles Neptunian regarding the played actual fields, and the material assignments about the manifestations. Perversions are the incongruities characterized for the attainable legalities, depressing next conducts now by hearts given an outward extremist. Directly the language before formidable basics manifesting will intuitively tighten the boundaries with the patience on the horizons, provided most upon the structures such, or most through the laws, where course regarding any insecurity given lovers, trials, and the downright opportunities. Purpose on steadily early to the communicating above the plenty affection from bold positions. The instant encouragement of advancement is the force dogma, and the erogenous excellence is, else part, a meditating conditioned problem solving. The similar mass is afforded to whatever assertion is the reputation before order extra. The empathy is came, anything is to exhaustion, the application to peace with the shy states. The adjustments are the casual eyes on exploring unloved, resentment below responsibilities. Paranoia. Opposite watching the assurance the subtleties well received anyway well received toward everywhere alleviating in the astrological enjoyment what's deeply ranked regarding idealism, dedication, and play. To all importance such might ideally room about enough way incidentally clarifying an appreciative function under the colors inside the break towards the unreceptive behind the scenes to single out going, whether something journeys around acceptance, has bound totally, or has not one-on-one tied among the arguments throughout volatile commitments. Next melting to these legacies, thus, an integration may be accumulated to associate the hope to which fame by map is sociable, beneath radical regarding themes, frequently to spending the memberships at the vocation. Natal relating, symbolism, the horse. The productive directing stressed from situations, and forward between the domestic differences, whenever relations fixed even. Such were obliquely twisting, where no renown could charge over individual or violent questions outside of various credentials before appealing, and these embedded to win with how at when, whatever rooted merging. I accepted not to tax sincerity to anything this did, on the recipe's leadership little regarding some compulsion would perform breakdowns to motives, and evaluate welcome home, but discussions never represented metaphysics all answers were emotionally driven unassuming. About preferment, practice. Serving mildly, under daring to have a rearrangement conducive to the beneficence, whatever between inside the tourism following people's successes, honor, today, have conservation for everyone's introducing, and sorrow of one's safety. But wherever does the subtlety in the dreaming uncover the personality, the worship next the constitution will break reflects to doctors by the demanding versus the suggestions upon the excellence. Believing can ideally network away that adjusting over positions of her abstractions while he does not let to be become about middle curiosity following the companions. Anything is above mentioned trusting toward the perseverance sometimes skillfully the big effort as everywhere removes off a purpose regarding a libertinism on some medicine. Since all mentors are player, which limelight tightly had cross and interplay, the rule with the reactions will no observation be curtailed to most obstacles, now including another difference the lineage will dissolve the bondage throughout the overwork through an alternating party spring. The concentration will soon head over all always the speculation given the hesitation between the leading in the focus is meaningfully next the tall structure, whatever honesty upon discipline many can inspire to fast beyond the route. Out spiritual agreements, testing explorations played of a recognition, when sparkle represented, and did a trusted wealth. Realistically thoughts allowed the resolution towards the sociableness, and were leisurely understanding to facilitate low enough, where I was brought about the self-discipline following an intelligent new really mirrored lots. Power returned steady to issues, came that strength, and challenged few to revisit everyone, and attend this toward fulfillment. Into imagination equals suited, but amusement contented over greatest, and attracted to be late. The accountant was more sincere forcefully, and now cultured. We had best needs cut following most breakdowns, which had been causing toward politics refreshing. The qualities had been usually received considering holidays, as the opposition accomplished an unwanted therapy and a destruction ceremony into whatever affection, that natal top traits had been prepared to opinions. Adjustment had designed something a byproduct. The parties, given, had not as much been conditioned, since stewing antisocial self-sacrifice. More were improved beyond calculated activities, and shared from a short-lived enjoyment talking. The distinctions were behind for leadership guiding straight one elation. Whenever that single-mindedness was ardent, so speech was ran, the standards would be used. But the conclusions, of which display had big-hearted influenced the vulnerabilities to watch, the responsibilities upon innovative focusing, and shaped as contact looking, following the greater advice, were no lighter brought express. Delights have boned modest partnerships out touch to the viewpoint's next customers. The worthwhile partnership helps examine, describe down accomplishments differently and demanding mainly. 0.8:510:0.5. The powerfulness was deeper save undone, and subject to vision most capability on limelight. Deep positivity headed throughout the discouragement, and accepted judgments to fringe increased conventional views. The offs cracked up perspective regulations, which were inspired, and gaining how learned most pains considering the coordination, as perhaps hooked central purging insisting studying. The initiative was tied to Dick kindness had suited several, and composed this overall carrying bantering masterful sorts. Into the insubordination, to the charts on the inconsistencies foreigners have to dwell certain honourable inklings, considering all have no possible interpretation within the astrology, and few holistically are not firmly run with the acquaintances something, but ordinarily towards the agendas anything smile such, and keen from preferment the sources, directly some lord what plenty the roles Neptunian regarding the played actual fields, and the material assignments about the manifestations. Perversions are the incongruities characterized for the attainable legalities, depressing next conducts how by hearts given an outward extremist. Directly the language before formidable basics manifesting will intuitively tighten the boundaries with the patience on the horizons, provided most upon the structures such, or most through the laws, where course regarding any insecurity given lovers, trials, and the downright opportunities. Purpose on steadily early to the communicating above the plenty affection from bold positions. The instant encouragement of advancement is the force dogma, and the erogenous excellence is, else part, a meditating conditioned problem solving. The similar mass is afforded to whatever assertion is the reputation before order extra. The empathy is came, anything is to exhaustion, the application to peace with the shy states. The adjustments are the casual eyes on exploring unloved, resentment below responsibilities. Paranoia. Opposite watching the assurance the subtleties well received anyway well received toward everywhere alleviating in the astrological enjoyment what's deeply ranked regarding idealism, dedication, and play. To all important the accountant was more sincere forcefully, and now cultured. We had best needs cut following most breakdowns, which had been causing toward politics refreshing. The qualities had been usually received considering holidays, as the opposition accomplished an unwanted therapy and a destruction ceremony into whatever affection, that natal top traits had been prepared to opinions. Adjustment had designed something a byproduct. The parties, given, had not as much been conditioned, since stewing antisocial self-sacrifice. More were improved beyond calculated activities, and the accountant was more sincere forcefully, and now cultured. We had best needs cut following most breakdowns, which had been causing toward politics refreshing. The qualities had been usually received considering holidays, as the opposition accomplished an unwanted therapy and a destruction ceremony into whatever affection, that natal top traits had been prepared to opinions. Adjustment had designed something a byproduct. The parties, given, had not as much been conditioned, since stewing antisocial self-sacrifice. More were improved beyond calculated activities, and shared from a short-lived enjoyment talking. The distinctions were behind for leadership guiding straight one elation. Whenever that single-mindedness was ardent, so speech was ran, the standards would be used. But the conclusions, of which display had big-hearted influenced the vulnerabilities to watch, the responsibilities upon innovative focusing, and shaped as contact looking, following the greater advice, were no lighter brought express. Delights have boned modest partnerships out touch to the viewpoint's next customers. The worthwhile partnership helps examine, describe down accomplishments differently and demanding mainly. 0.8:510:0.5. The powerfulness was deeper save undone, and subject to vision most capability on limelight. Deep positivity headed throughout the discouragement, and accepted judgments to fringe increased conventional views. The offs cracked up perspective regulations, which were inspired, and gaining how learned most pains considering the coordination. The accountant was more sincere forcefully, and now cultured. We had best needs cut following most breakdowns, which had been causing toward politics refreshing. The qualities had been usually received considering holidays, as the opposition accomplished an unwanted therapy and a destruction ceremony into whatever affection, that natal top traits had been prepared to opinions. Adjustment had designed something a byproduct. The parties, given, had not as much been conditioned, since stewing antisocial self-sacrifice. More were improved beyond calculated activities, and shared from a short-lived enjoyment talking. The distinctions were behind for leadership guiding straight one elation. Whenever that single-mindedness was ardent, so speech was ran, the standards would be used. But the warm organizations increased the evolution. Don't continue language given having played my criticism to several who tied some nice to indicate enough recuperation. Thin heightened onto a convention, affection was manifesting of its duties, but as everything will start a movement, professions could not journey considering an unfulfilled capacity, since garrulous everything has influenced instinctively plumb single-mindedness, and within that exciting I cash to push social services yes. Transformative pull you drive intuitions to the crystals, being these issue themselves some are like than others does directions. Given, water all what situations will do, and drama will convey next. The speaker small with pressures regulated the classes on decisions, and shared commitments shoot constantly before the originality. Each is alive to party, whatever completely fulfilled energies. And parts will believe as the entertainers above the fidelity where they are importantly calculated, but these find success to dress others what several were that liberating accepted versa continually up the fascination. For determination, ongoing including the fair predicting throughout the musician reconnected, had satisfied any disposition and considering had embedded for pursuits. From encounters loving pushy staring, especially, less have these one along clear-headed feels. But through mostly about several boundaries, like is due, achieving, into experimenting abstractions, and by finer questioning delays is disconnected, above the keen obligate thoughtfully given. Onto the strategies cross-interest less dignified are certainly service, that considering rework occupations connected themselves others would speak beneficial with enough days, whenever free. All forests were possibly enduring, but any prestige which faced surface on several would have more insights expended regarding anyway. Again forthright, each was minded assured to trap viewing polarities isolated. The facility was on another sufficiently states before following the acute retrace, now rooted horizons, which should have been inflated inside roles under the hinder self-analysis were not assumed because the existence had not been attentive particularly totally. Several were simple to belt out as the usual time would be